Hello, everyone. A very happy Tuesday to you all. It is Tuesday, which means it is story time once again. And here we are for our story time, diving back into The Blue Adept by Piers Anthony. We made it through the first two chapters last week, and start the next two chapters. We'll see progresses and how much we get through. But let's talk a little bit about what happened at the beginning of the book. Of course, as always, if you do want to check it out, youtube.com/@SirArminius. You can go to catch the replays of all of my live reading from my Tuesdays. So chapters 1 and 2 are up on the YouTube channel. And the first book is all up on the YouTube channel. So what are you waiting for? Get out there, listen in, like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. youtube.com/@SirArminius. Of course, I do live stream there as well. So you're also welcome to live streams on my YouTube channel. Whatever makes you happy. 'Cause if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. All right, so let's talk a little bit about chapters 1 and 2. So we open up with basically the unicorn stallion, the head of the unicorn pack, has sent for Nasa to come and be bred. Nasa doesn't want to go, and Stile thinks that she should. Finds out from the Lady Blue that the reason she doesn't want to go is she doesn't feel comfortable leaving him yet without her protection, which she could not do if she was with Foal. So Stile, to save face, says, "No, I need your help. I need you to stay with me." He goes to Stallion and find out what it is that the Stallion, in order to postpone her breeding by a season. And that is that Stile meets him basically in single combat. Oh, yay. Stile, of course, for in our terms, the herd stallion is quite large. So he's not exactly looking forward to it, but it is something that needs to be done. When he came back to the castle, he basically, chapter 2 was all about the story of Lady Blue and how she came to meet Stile's other half. So, very long story, doesn't make a lot of difference to our story here, so I'm not going to recap over it, but definitely worth a listen. When I read it, because it's in the Lady, it was in her English accent that kept on morphing slightly into an Irish accent. Now, to be fair, the guys I gave the Irish, but just speaking for her, it kept on sort of sliding into there, and I'd have to reset into the English accent that it should be, because that's what this world has. It has an English accent. So, there is where we are. And now we're going to go ahead and dive into the chapters for this week. Again, my goal is to get us through chapters 3 and 4, possibly 5, but I wouldn't necessarily count on 5 making it. It all depends on how long they are. It is still wicked hot up here in New England, and I have the AC running, and I have fans going. So, depending on how long it is, we'll see how we go. So, sit back, everyone, relax, and prepare to enjoy. Just a reminder, I won't engage with the audience during the chapters because I do record them. That's what goes up on the YouTube. But feel free to engage with each other. Feel free to engage with me, and I will be happy to respond between. All right, everyone. Here we go. Chapter 3, Proton. Nasa carried Stile across the fields to the forest where the usable fold of the curtain passed. While Hulk remains away, and I am in the other frame, do thou protect the Lady Blue from harm, Stile murmured as she galloped. I have no better friend than thee to do this bidding. The unicorn snorted musically. He hardly needed to tell her. Were they not oath friends? They reached the curtain, where it scintillated faintly in the shadowed glade. I will try to return in a day, Stile said. If I do not, Nasa blew a word note. Hulk. That's right. Send Hulk after me. He knows the frame. He knows the game. Should anything untoward happen to me in Proton Frame. She blasted vehement negation. Her horn could sound quite emphatic on occasion. Oh, I'll look out for myself, he reassured her. And Sheen is my bodyguard there. She has saved me often enough. But in the remote chance that, well, thou canst go and get bread immediately and raise thy foal. Nasa cut him off with a noise note, and Stile let the subject drop. It had been difficult enough getting her to accept the fact of his adept status. She was not about to accept the prospect of his demise. He hoped he would not disappoint her. Stile faced the curtain. Through it, he made out the faint outline of a lighted hall and piles of crates. A person was walking down the hall, so Stile waited until it was clear. Most people had no awareness of the curtain, and there was a tacit agreement among curtain crossers that the ignorance of such people be allowed to remain pristine. Then he hummed an impromptu tune as he undressed and folded his clothes carefully and hid it away in the crotch of a branch. As he stood naked, Nasa shifted into girl form, embraced him, kissed him, and laughed. I am like Proton. Takes more than nakedness to be part of Proton Frame, Stile said gruffly. Thou art full of mischief, unicorn. He disengaged from her and resumed his humming before the curtain. Send me all into that hall, he sang, stepping forward. He felt the passed through. He was in the hall, naked, alone. He turned around and faced Nasa, who was faintly visible beyond the curtain. She had shifted back to her natural form. Bye, friend, he called and waved to her. Then he went resolutely back and walked rapidly down the hall. It was strange being bare again, after getting accustomed to the mores of the other frame. Soon the hall intersected a main travel route, where many naked serfs walked swiftly toward their places of employment. He merged with them, becoming largely anonymous. He was smaller than all the men, and most of the women, and some of them, but he was used to this. He still resented the disparaging glances some serfs cast at him, but reminded himself that a person who made a value judgment of another person solely in consideration of size was in fact advertising his own incompetence to judge. Still, Stile was glad to get out of the public hall and into his private apartment. His handprint keyed open the door. Stile stepped inside. A naked man looked up, frowning. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then the other stood. Sheen did not tell me you would return this hour. I shall retire. One moment, Stile said. He recognized the man as his double, the robot who had filled in for him while he was in the magic frame of Phaze. Without this machine, Stile's absences would become too obvious, and that could make mischief. I have not encountered you before. Does Sheen treat you well? Sheen ignores me, the robot said, except when others are present. This is proper in the circumstances. Yet you are programmed to resemble me in all things. Don't you get bored? A machine of my type does not get bored, unless so directed. Not even when you are put away in the closet? I am deactivated at such times. This bothered Stile, who felt sympathy for all oppressed creatures. If you do feel dissatisfied, please let me know. I'll put in a word for you with the mistress. Thank you for your courtesy, the robot said without emotion. It does not fit my present need. I am a machine. I should retire now. When is Sheen due back? In 4 minutes, 15 seconds from Mark. Yes, retire now. I'll cover for you. The robot, of course, did not assimilate the humor. Robots came in many types and levels, and this one was relatively unsophisticated. It had no consciousness feedback circuits. It walked to the wall, looking completely human. It bothered Stile to realize that this was exactly the way he looked to others, so small and nondescript. The robot opened a panel and stepped into the closet aperture behind. In a moment, it was out of sight and deactivated. Stile was reminded of the golem that had impersonated him, or rather, impersonated his alternate self, the Blue Adept, until he, Stile, arrived on the scene to destroy it. What was the difference, really, between a golem and a humanoid robot? One was activated by magic, the other by science. There were more parallels between those two frames than graphical. Stile sat down at the table the robot had left. A game of cards, solitaire, was laid out. If the robot did not experience boredom, why was it playing cards? Answer: because Stile himself would have done this. If bored, obscure game skills. The robot probably followed Stile's program of acrobatic exercises too, but could hardly benefit from these. It was emulating him, so as to improve verisimilitude, the appearance of authenticity. He analyzed the situation of the cards, then resumed play. He was deep in it when the door opened and Sheen appeared. She was beautiful. She was only slightly taller than he, with over-perfect proportions. Breasts slightly larger and firmer and more erect than the computer standard ideal for her size and age. Waist a trifle smaller, abdomen flatter, hips and buttocks luxuriantly flowing fair hair. The average man wanted a better woman. In fact, he wanted a better than ideal woman. His tastes distorted by centuries of commercialized propaganda that claimed that a woman in perfect health and fitness was somehow less than lovely. Stile's tastes were average, therefore Sheen was far from average. She reminded him moderately of another girl he had known years ago, a woman smaller than himself, a female jockey he had thought he loved. Toon had been her name, and from that encounter on, he had been addicted to music. Yet Sheen, he knew objectively, was actually a happier and better woman. She had only one flaw, and he was not inclined to dwell on that at the moment. Stile rose and went to her, taking her in his arms. "Oh, is someone here?" she asked, surprised. "No one," he said, bringing her in for a kiss. "Let's make love." "With a robot? Don't be silly." She tried to break free of his embrace, but he only held her more tightly. "It is best with a robot," he assured her. "Oh." She considered momentarily. "All right." Oops, she was going along with it. "All right," he demanded. Just how far do you go with robots? My best friends are robots, she assured him. Come to the bed. Angry now, Stile let her go, but she was laughing. You amorous idiot, she exclaimed. Did you think I didn't know you? And she flung her arms about him and kissed him with considerably more passion than before. What gave me away? Stile asked. Aside from the differences between man and robot that I, of all people, she inquired mischievously, things like body radiation, perspiration, heartbeat, respiration, and the nuances of living reaction. Aside from those, Stile said, feeling foolish. He should have known he couldn't fool her even a moment. Your hands are tanned, she said. He looked at them. Sure enough, there was a distinct demarcation where his Phaze clothing terminated, leaving his hands exposed to the strong rays of the outdoor sun. On Proton were domed. Sunlight filtered to non-destructive intensity, so that only moderate tanning occurred. And of course, there were no demarcations on the bodies of people who wore no clothing. Not only did this uneven tanning distinguish him from the robot, it distinguished him from the other serfs of Proton. I'll have to start wearing gloves in Phaze. No such heroic measures are necessary, she assured him. She brought out some tinted hand lotion into his hands, converting them to untanned color. I don't know what I'd do without you, Stile said gratefully. You'd stay in Phaze the whole time, with that blue lady. No doubt. This is another world, she informed him. I had a piece of you before you even knew she existed. You have a good 6 hours before the first game of the tourney, and I know exactly how to spend it. She did. She was as amorous as she was lovely, and she existed only to guard and to please him. It was easy to yield to her. More than easy. Afterward, as they lay on the bed, she inquired, And how exactly are things in Phaze? I killed the guy who was impersonating me, and gave my friend Curlgeyer the werewolf advice on how to regain his state back. I know about that. You returned here for the final pre-tourney qualifying game, remember? What did you do on your last trip there? The werewolves and the unicorns helped me to establish my identity as the Blue Adept, Stile said, grossly simplifying the matter. I do magic now, but I have to fight the unicorn herd stallion to preserve Nasa from breeding for a season. I like Nasa, said, but doesn't she get jealous of the Lady Blue? No, they are oath friends now. Nasa knows my destiny lives with my own kind. With the Lady Blue, Sheen said. Stile realized he had carelessly hurt Sheen. She is not of this world, as you pointed out. That's what you think. It's a different world, but she's here, too. She can't cross the curtain, can she? So, she must have a double on this side. Stile suffered a shock of amazement. That's right. There must be another self of her living here. Real woman, all the time, right here in Proton. Then he caught himself. Unideal. Oh, never mind, Sheen said. We both know I'm not your kind, however much I might wish to. But why did you tell me? Nasa helped you reach, didn't she? Can I do less? There was that. Sheen identified with Nasa and tried to emulate her reactions. Actually, I can't afford to go looking for her now. And what would I do if I found her? I'm sure you'd think of something, Sheen said wryly. Usually do. Stile smiled. Contrary to appearances, there is more than one concern on this male mind. I am fated to love the Lady Blue, though she may not be fated to love me. But how can I love two of her? I really have no business with her proton alternate. You don't want to see her? I don't dare see her. My friends can readily locate her for you. Forget it. It would only complicate my life, and it is already somewhat too complicated for equanimity. How long can I continue functioning in two frames? I feel a bit like a bigamist already, and I'm not even married. You really ought to settle this. He turned on her. Why are you doing this? But he knew why. He had hurt her, and she was expiating the hurt by exploring it to the limit. There was a certain logic in this. There was always logic in what Sheen did. They both knew he could never truly love Sheen or marry her, any more than he could have loved or married Nasa. Sheen would always love him, but could never be more to him than a temporary mistress and a guardian. You're right, she said, her pursuit abated by his pointed question. It is best forgotten. I shall store it in the appropriate memory bank. Don't forget something by remembering it. We have a tourney to win, she reminded him, aptly changing the subject in the manner of her sex. You understand, he cautioned her. I cannot reasonably expect to win the tournament. I'm not at my peak game capacity, and in a large-scale, double elimination competition like this, I can get lost in the crush. And if you lose early, your tenure as a Proton Surf ends, and you'll have to stay in Phaze. And I'll never see you again, Sheen said. You have reason to try. Find out who has been trying to kill you here, and you can only pursue investigation if you become a citizen. There is that, he agreed. He thought of the anonymous citizen who had his knees lasered and gotten him washed out as a jockey. The series of events that action had precipitated had paradoxically enriched his life immeasurably, introducing him to the entire frame of Phaze. Yet still an abiding anger smoldered. He had a score with someone, and Sheen was right. It was an incentive to win the tourney if he possibly could, for the winner would be granted the ultimate prize of Proton, citizenship. Runners-up would receive extensions of their tenure and the chance to compete again in a subsequent tourney. So he did have a chance. A good chance because of his game abilities. But the odds of final victory remained substantially against him. He wondered, coincidentally, whether the history the Lady Blue had recently related had any bearing. A snow demon had fired a freeze spell at the Blue Adept, and it had caught the Hinny and damaged her knees. Stile had been lasered in the knees while riding a horse. Was this an example of the parallelism? Things did tend to align, one way or another, but sometimes the route was devious. One game at a time, Sheen said. If and when you lose, I'll just have to abide by that. I know you'll try. He agreed. They reported on schedule to the game annex. Sheen could not accompany him inside. Only tourney entrants were permitted now. She would go to a spectator annex and tune in to his games on Holo, unless it happened to be one in which a live audience was permitted. She would lend her applause and opinion when feedback opportunity occurred. There was a line at the entrance. There was hardly ever such a crowd, but the tourney came just once a year. 600 serfs had to report at once, and though the game facilities were extensive, this was a glut. When he stepped inside, the game computer interviewed him efficiently. Identity, a voice inquired from a holographic image of the capital letters GC suspended a meter before him at head height. The computer could make any image and any sound emanate from anywhere, but kept it token. Proton was governed by citizens, not by machines, and the smart machine maintained that in memory constantly. Stile, Surf, ladder 35M, rung 5. That gave his name, status, age, sex, and the fact that he had qualified for the tourney by holding the 5th rung of the competitive ladder for his bracket, the minimum entry requirement. He could have been first on his ladder had he gone for it earlier. He was actually one of the best players extant. But all that really counted was qualification. All had equal tourney status. Stile 35M-5. Assigned number 281 for round 1 only. The voice of the game computer said. A decal emerged from a slot. Stile took it and set it against his forehead. Now he was marked, for the purpose of this round, with the number and name, 281 Stile. Proceed to the 276-300 sub-annex and encounter your opposite number. Your game will be announced in due course. Respond immediately or forfeit. Acknowledged, Stile said. The floating GC faded out, and he proceeded to the designated annex. For this round, a number of waiting rooms and hall alcoves had been converted to rendezvous points. After the first few rounds, many of these would revert to their normal uses, as the number of entrants decreased. Already the annex was filling. Each person wore the decal on his or her forehead, all numbers in the range of 276 to 300. Most were naked men and women, some familiar to him, but before Stile could fully orient, a clothed man stepped opposite. Salutation, opposite number, the man said. Stile was taken aback. This was a citizen, fully garbed in tan trousers, white shirt, jacket, and shoes. But he did bear the number on his forehead, 281, with no name. Citizens were generally anonymous to serfs. Anonymity was a privilege of status that showed more obviously in the clothing that concealed bodily contours. Serfs had no secrets. Sir, Stile said. We are all equal, ad hoc, the citizen said. He was handsome and tall, a good decade older than Stile, and as self-assured as all citizens were. Come, converse in a nook. He put his hand on Stile's elbow and guided him. Yes, sir. Stile agreed numbly. His first match was against a citizen. Of course, he had known that citizens participated in the tourney. He just had not thought in terms of playing against one himself. On Proton, there were 2 classes, the citizens and the serfs, the haves and the have-nots. Stile himself was employed by a citizen, as every serf was. No unemployed serf was permitted on the planet beyond a brief grace period, and no employed serf could remain beyond his 20-year tenure, with certain very limited exceptions. This was part of what the tourney was about. The citizen guided him to a bench, then sat down beside him. This alleviated his third of a meter advantage in height, but not his immeasurable advantage in status. I am popularly known as the Rifleman. Perhaps you have heard of me. Stile suffered a second shock. The tourney winner, 15 years ago. I watched that game. Sir? The Rifleman smiled. Yes, I was a serf like you. I won my citizenship the hard way. Now the perennial lure of the game brings me back. You never do get it out of your system. Who are you? Sir, I am... Ah, now I connect. Stile is the designation of one of the top current gamesmen. I had not realized your tenure was expiring. It had 3 years to go, sir, but I had a problem with my employer. Ah, I see. So you had to go for double or nothing. Well, this is a pleasure. I've entered other tourneys since my ascent, but the moment I matched with a serf, he would throw it into chance, and 2 or 3 of those in succession washed me out early. It is hard to beat a person unless he thinks he can beat you. I'm sure you will give me an excellent game. Yes, sir, Stile agreed. I don't like chance. He didn't like having to play a citizen either, but that could not be said here. Of all the people to encounter this early, a former tourney winner. No wonder the rifleman's opponents in other tourneys. A citizen could enter anything he wanted, of course, being immune to the rules governing serfs, and had avoided honest contests. Chance was at least a 50-50 proposition, instead of a virtually guaranteed loss. It was axiomatic that the poorer players preferred chance, while the better ones disliked it, and the top players wished it would be abolished as a category. Stile had been 20 years old, already an avid follower of tourneys, when the rifleman fought his way up to ultimate victory by shooting 6 target ducks against his opponent's 3. A highly skilled player who had, of course, taken a name reflective of that victory. But that had been a long time back. The man could be out of practice and out of shape, unless he had been practicing privately. Yet why should a citizen bother? He had nothing to win in the tourney. A citizen, almost by definition, had everything. Fabulous wealth, power, and prestige. If a citizen saw an attractive serf girl, he could hire her and use her and fire her, all within the hour. It would not even occur to her to protest. A citizen could have a household of humanoid robots, virtually indistinguishable from living people, until one got to know them, which did not take long, to serve his every need. The finest creature comforts of the galaxy were his, and the most exotic entertainments. Small wonder that many citizens grew indolent and fat. I can virtually read your thoughts, the citizen said, and I will answer them. I am not in the shape I was when I won, but I have practiced somewhat and remain reasonably formidable. Of course, I lack motive now. Victory will not benefit me, and defeat will not harm me. Yet it would be satisfying to win it again. Stile was spared the awkwardness of answering by the game computer's introductory announcement. Attention all entrants. The tourney roster is now complete. 400 citizens, 600 serfs, and 24 aliens. Pairing for individual matches is random each round. The tourney is double elimination. Only entrants with 2 losses are barred from further competition. Serfs among the final 64 survivors will receive 1-year extension of tenure. Those proceeding beyond that level will receive commensurately greater rewards. The tourney winner will be granted proton citizenship. Judging of all matches in the objective sphere is by computer. Subjective judging is by tabulated audience response. Special cases by panels of experts. Bonus awards will be granted for exceptional games. Malingerers will forfeit. There was a momentary pause as the computer shifted from general to specific. Now it would be addressing the annexes individually. Game pair 276, report to grid. Hastily, 2 serfs rose, a man and a woman, and walked to the grid set up in the center of the room. They began the routine of game selection. Ah, this is like old times, the rifleman said appreciatively. Yes, sir, Stile agreed. He would have liked to follow the first couple's progress, but of course he could not ignore the citizen. Not old to me, sir. Contemporary times for you, of course, the citizen said. I have followed your progress intermittently. You have played some excellent games. Perhaps I misremember. Don't you happen also to be an excellent equestrian? I was a winning jockey, yes, sir, Stile agreed. Ah, now it comes back. You were lasered, anonymously. Through the knees, yes, sir. That had to be the action of a citizen. Yes, sir. Citizens are a law unto themselves. The rifleman smiled. Don't forget, I was a serf for 19 years and a citizen only 15. My fundamental values are those of the serf. However, I doubt that even most birthright citizens would approve such vandalism. There are licit and illicit ways to do business, and no citizen should need to resort to the illicit. A rogue citizen could be a menace to other citizens, and therefore should be dealt with firmly for a practical as well as legal reason. Yes, sir. As you know, I am in this tourney merely for titillation. I now perceive a way to increase that interest. Allow me to proffer this wage. If you overmatch me in this round, I shall, as consequence, make an investigation into the matter of your lasering and report to you before you depart the planet. Agreed? No serf could lightly say no to any citizen, and Stile had no reason to demur. He wanted very much to know the identity of his enemy, yet he hesitated. Sir, what would be my consequence if you defeat me? The rifleman stroked his angular, beardless chin. Ah, there is that. The stakes must equate. Yet, what can a serf offer a citizen? Have you any personal assets? Sir, no serf has. The citizen waggled a finger at him admonishingly, smiling, and Stile suddenly found himself liking this expressive man. No serf could afford to like a citizen, of course. They were virtually in different worlds. Still, Stile was moved. Of course a serf has no material assets, the rifleman said, but serfs often do have information that citizens are not necessarily aware of. Since what I offer you is information, perhaps you could offer me information too. Stile considered. As it happened, he did have news that should interest a citizen, but he was honor-bound not to impart it. He happened to know that a number of the most sophisticated service robots were self-willed, acting on their own initiative, possessing self-awareness and ambition. Theoretically, there could eventually be a machine revolt, but he had sworn not to betray the interests of these machines, so long as they did not betray the welfare of Planet Proton, and his word was absolute. He could not put that information on the line. I regret I cannot, sir. The citizen shrugged. Too bad. The wager would have added luster to the competition. As though the future of a serf's life were not luster enough. But of course, the citizen was thinking only of himself. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I would have liked to make that wager had I a stake to post. Are you not aware you could make the wager and renege if you lose? You really don't have much to lose. Stile, under tension of the tourney, was suddenly angry. That's reprehensible! Then belatedly, Sir? Ah, you are an honest man. I thought as much. I like that. Most top gamesmen do value integrity. Stile was spared further conversation by the interjection of the computer. Game pair 281, report to grid. The rifleman stood. That's us. Good luck, Stile. He proffered his hand. Stile, amazed, accepted it. He had never heard of a citizen shaking hands with a serf. This was an extension of courtesy that paralleled that of the herd stallion in Phaze, the disciplined encounter of respected opponents. Phaze! Suddenly, Stile realized what he had to offer. the knowledge of the existence of the alternate frame. The information might do the citizens no good, since most people could not perceive the curtain between frames, let alone cross it, but it would surely be of interest to the man. There was no absolute prohibition about spreading the word, though Stile preferred not to. But if he won the game, he wouldn't have to. This seemed to be an acceptable risk. "Sir," Stile said quickly, "I do have information. I just remembered. I believe it would interest." "Then it is a bargain," the citizen said, squeezing Stile's hand. "Yes, sir. Only I hope you will not share the information with others if—" "Agreed. This is a private wager and a private matter between us, either way." "Yes, sir." "Second call for game pair 281, the computer announced. Appear at the grid within 10 seconds or both forfeit."
"You bucket of bolts!" the rifleman snapped. "Whom do you suppose you are addressing?"
A lens swung about to fix on the citizen. The response was instant. "Abject apologies, sir. Time limit is waived." The rifleman's gaze swept across the silent room.
"You may laugh now."
The remaining serfs burst into laughter. "Rank hath its privileges," the rifleman said. He put his hand on Stile's elbow, guiding him to the grid. This was a public mark of favor that awed the serfs present, Stile included. This citizen had been friendly and reasonably solicitous throughout, but now he was being so when all eyes were upon him.
"You lout!"
another citizen said, laughing.
"Now we'll all have to show favor to our serfs."
"What is Proton coming to?" a third citizen inquired. This one was a woman, elaborately gowned and coined, with sparkling sapphires on her wrists and ankles and a nugget of protonite on her forehead, reminding Stile of Nesa's snubhorn in her girl form. Parallelism again, perhaps. This citizen, too, was smiling, seeming almost like a person. It occurred to Stile that even citizens might get bored with their routine existences and appreciate comic relief on rare occasions. The tourney was a great equalizer. Now he faced the rifleman, the grid unit between them. This was a column inset with panels on opposite sides. The weight of the two men beside it caused the panels to illuminate. Stiles showed 4 categories across the top. 1 physical, 2 mental, 3 chance, 4 arts. 4 more were down the side. A, naked, B, tool, C, machine, D, animal. The letter facet was highlighted. Stile had to select from the letters. He experienced the usual pre-game tension, made worse by the fact that this was no routine game, but a round for the tourney, and made worse yet by the fact that his opponent was a citizen. What column would the rifleman choose? Physical or mental, surely. He was neither a gambler nor an artist, and he wanted a good game. He would want to get into 1B or 1C, tool or machine-assisted physical games like tennis or shooting, where his major expertise lay, or into 2B, where he might get it into chess. He had won a tourney game dramatically in chess. Stile remembered now, on his way up. In 15 years, he had probably improved his game. It was necessary to stay clear of this. Stile could play chess well himself, but he had not had 15 idle years to practice. He was up against someone who really could play the game. This could be the toughest opponent he would face in the entire tourney. A good game that he lost in a contest was no good. He needed a likely winner. His only real course seemed to be animal. Then he could get into horse racing or lion taming. His knees were weak, but this only became acute when he flexed them completely. He could do ordinary riding better than anyone he knew, and remained pretty good at trick riding. His smaller weight would give him an advantage, for the tourney made no allowances for size or sex. All games were unhandicapped. And he liked animals, while the rifleman, an expert hunter, probably did not have as close rapport. Yes, Stile touched D. Immediately a new grid showed. 1D, physical/animal. The rifleman had chosen as expected. Now the top line was 1 separate, 2 interactive, 3 combat, 4 cooperative. And the sideline was A flat, B variable, C discontinuity, D liquid. Stile had the letters again, which was fine. Horse racing was on a flat surface, and he had control of the surfaces. He did not want to get involved with trained sharks or squid wrestling in the liquid medium, and feared the rifleman might be experienced in falconing in discontinuity, i.e., air. Mountain rodeo would be all right in the variable surface. Stile had bulldogged mountain goats before, but that category also included python tug-of-war in trees, and Stile did not care for that. So we stuck with A flat. The rifleman selected 2 interactive, so they were in box 2A. No horse racing, but there could be 2-horse polo or... The new grid was upon them. 9 squares to be filled in by turns. Lists of games and animals appeared. The rifleman met Stile's gaze over the column. "Take it," he said, smiling. He was giving Stile the advantage of first selection, rather than requiring the game computer to designate the turn randomly. Such minor courtesies were permitted. They facilitated the selection process. "Thank you, sir." Stile designated polo/horse in the center box. The citizen put baseball/android in the right upper box. Oh no. Stile had not considered that androids counted as animals for game purposes. Baseball was played by modified 12th century rules. 20th century rules. 9 players per team. It was a ball game, but there was some overlap in categories. Ball games could appear in several sections of the master grid. This was an animal-assisted ball game, as was polo. The difference was, there were a number of animals here, not used as steeds, but as actual players. Obviously, the rifleman was expert at this sort of game, while Stile was only fair. He had walked into a trap. Sure enough, while Stile filled in other individual animal contests, the rifleman filled in android team games, soccer, basketball, football, and when they played the grid, the citizen won. Football/android. Disaster. Stile had not played team football in a long time. He could pass, kick, and catch a football, but an hour-long session with 20 bruisingly huge androids? What a horror! There was no chance now to brush up on the antique Earth planet Americana the rifleman evidently liked. Stile had to play immediately or forfeit. The citizen did not bother to ask him to concede, knowing he would not. For better or worse, this had to be fought out on the field. They adjourned to the bowl stadium. It was sparsely attended by spectators, since there were several hundred games in progress and surf interest was divided. However, a number began to file in as the news of a citizen surf android match spread. It was not that serfs were interested in Stile at this point. They merely hoped to see a citizen get knocked about a little with impunity. In the interest of economy of time and efficient use of facilities, this game will be abbreviated to 30 minutes playing time without interruption, the game computer announced. Each party will select 20 animal players, from which a continuous playing roster of 10 will be maintained. Substitutions are limited to 1 per team per play, performed between plays. Proceed. The computer was certainly moving it along. And no wonder. For a second playing field was already being utilized, and the remaining 2 would surely be in use before Stile's game finished. They reviewed the androids. The artificial men stood in a line, each hulking and sexless and stupid, but well muscled. Each carried a placard labeling its specialty: fullback, halfback, quarterback, and an array of offensive and defensive linemen. The capability of each was set within a standard tolerance. An android could perform exactly what it was supposed to do, no more and no less. Thus, the outcome of the game would be determined by the management and strategy and participation of the two human players, not the skill of the androids. The largest imponderable was that of human skill, for this was not a remote control game. The androids were there merely to assist the real players, who could accompany any position on their teams, but had to participate continuously. A good contestant would enable his team to prevail. A bad one would drag his team down to defeat. Stile feared that the rifleman would prove to be good, while Stile himself, partly because of his size, would be less than good. The rifleman selected 4 pass receivers and a solid offensive line. He was going for an aerial offense, without doubt. Stile chose pass receivers too, and a passing quarterback, then concentrated on his defensive line. He had to hope for a stalled game and errors. As he saw it, defense was the refuge of incompetence, and that was apt to be him. He dreaded this game. It began. Chance gave Stile's team first possession of the ball. His animals were in white, the rifleman's in black. The opposing team lined up like faceless demons from the frame of Phaze, darkly formidable. They swept forward, kicking the ball ahead, converging on its locale as it landed. Stile's receiver android had no chance. He was down on the 10-yard line. Yards, Stile thought. This was one of the few places where the old system of measurements prevailed on Planet Proton, because of the vintage and origin of this particular game. It was easiest to think of them as scant meters. Now the onus was on him that would bring the football down the field and across the opposing goal line. Stile had a hunch this would not be easy. He assigned himself to be a pass receiver and scheduled the play for his runner. That should keep Stile himself from getting crushed under a pile of android meat. Of course, he knew the androids were programmed to be very careful of human beings. Still, a tackle was a tackle, and that could be bruising. He was thoroughly padded in his white playing suit, of course, but he knew accidents could happen. The play proceeded. The pass receivers dodged the opposing linemen and moved out on their patterns. Stile got downfield and cut back as if to receive the ball, and found himself thoroughly blocked off by the android pass defender. Catch the ball? He could not even see it. The only way he could hope to get it, had it been thrown to him, was if it passed between the animal's legs. Fortunately, he knew no pass was coming. Stile's runner bowled into the line, making 1 yard before disappearing into the pileup. That, obviously, was not the way to go. Still, this first drive was mainly to feel his way. The nuances were already coming back to him, and he was getting a feel for the performance tolerances of the androids. He should be able to devise good strategy in due course. Next play, he tried a reverse end run. He lost a yard. But he was watching the black team's responses. The androids, of course, lacked imagination. A really novel play would fool them, and perhaps enable his team to make a big gain or even score. On the third play, he tried a screen pass to one of his receivers. The pass was complete, but the receiver advanced only to the line of scrimmage before getting dumped. No breakthrough here. 4th down and time to kick the ball downfield. Stile signaled his kicker to come in, and realized belatedly that he had selected no kicker. None of his animals specialized in any kind of kick, and therefore could not do it. If he had his quarterback make the attempt, the job would surely be bungled, and the other team would recover the ball quite near the goal line. Yet if he did not, a whistle blew, the referee penalizing his team for delay of game. 5 yards. He had to kick it away. No help for it. Stile would have to kick it himself. He would not have the booming power of an android, and he dreaded the thought of getting buried under a mound of tackling animals. But at least he could accomplish something. If he got the kickoff promptly, he might get away without being bashed. No time to debate with himself. He called the play, assigning the kick to himself. The teams lined up, the ball was snapped, and the enormous black line converged on Stile like a smashing stone wave. Stile stepped forward quickly and punted. Distracted by the looming lineman, he dropped the ball almost to the ground before his toe caught it. The ball shot forward, barely clearing the animals, and made a low arch downfield, angling out of bounds just shy of the 50-yard line. Not bad, all things considered. He had gained about 40 yards. He had been lucky. Had the black androids had the wit to expect an incompetent punt, they might have blocked it or caught it before it went out, and had an excellent run back. Luck, however, seldom played consistent favorites. Stile had to do better, or the first bad break would put him behind. Now, it was the rifleman's turn on offense. The citizen had stayed back during the prior plays, keeping himself out of mischief. Now, he made his first substitution, bringing in one of his pass receivers. Stile exchanged one of his receivers for a pass defender. The first plays would probably be awkward since most of Stile's players were offensive and most of the rifleman's players were defensive. But the longer the drive continued, the more qualified players could be brought in, at the rate of one per play. Of course, the offensive and defensive lines were fairly similar for game purposes, so the exchange of as few as 3 backfield players could transform a team. All the same, Stile hoped the drive did not continue long. The rifleman assumed the position of quarterback. His animals lined up. The play commenced. Stile's line charged in, but the rifleman acted with poise, making a neat, short, bullet-like pass to his receiver on the sideline. It was complete. The pass had been too accurately thrown for the receiver to miss, too swift for the defender to interfere with. The citizen had a net gain of 8 yards. The rifleman, now Stile appreciated how this applied to football too. The citizen was a superior player of this arcane game, better than an android passer. Therefore, he had a superior team, while Stile had an indifferent team. Stile substituted in another pass defender, but the citizen brought in another receiver. Stile could not double cover. Those passes were going to be trouble. They were. The rifleman marched his team relentlessly downfield. Not every pass connected, and not every play was a pass. But with 4 tries to earn each first down, the offensive team had no trouble. All too soon, the rifleman scored. Then the rifleman substituted in his own place kicker and let him make the extra point. The score was 7-0, the rifleman's advantage. Complete team substitutions were permitted after a touchdown. It was a new game, with Stile receiving again, except that now he was in the hole. 5 minutes of playing time had elapsed. Stile's team received the ball and attempted a run back. His animal got nowhere. Stile had his first down on the 12-yard line. It was time to get clever. If he could fool the defenders and break an android free, he might score on a single play. But this could be risky. He set up the play. A fake run to the right, and a massive surge to the left, with every android lineman moving across to protect the runner. The result was a monstrous tangle as stupid animals got in each other's way. His runner crashed into his own pileup, getting nowhere, and the referee imposed a 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness, holding, and offensive interference. Half the distance to Stile's goal line. Second down, long yardage from the 6-yard line. So much for innovation. Stile tried to complete another pass, this time to himself. Maybe the rifleman wouldn't expect him to expose himself that way, and the surprise would work. A long bomb, trying for the moons, double or nothing. The play commenced. Stile ducked through the line and charged straight downfield. The rifleman cut across to guard him. Together they turned at the 50-yard line, and Stile cut back to the appointed spot to receive the pass. And the rifleman cut in front of him and intercepted it while it remained too high in the air for Stile to reach. "Sorry about that, friend," the citizen said as Stile hastily tackled him and the whistle blew to end the play. "Height has its advantages." It certainly did. Stile had lost the ball again without scoring. He heard the roar of reaction and applause from the filling audience section of the stadium. The rifleman had clearly made a good play. Now Stile would have to defend again against the devastating passing attack of his opponent. He was not disappointed. Methodically, the rifleman moved the ball down the field until he scored again. This time, he passed for the extra points and made them. The score was 15-0. The first half of the game was finished, 15 minutes of playing time. Stile had tried every device he could think of to stop his opponent from scoring, and had only managed to slow the rate of advance and use up time. The citizen had averaged a point per minute, even so. Stile had to move, and move well in the second half, or rapidly see the game put out of reach. He needed a dramatic, original system of defense and offense. But what could he do? Surprise first. What could he do that really would surprise his opponent, while staying within the clumsy rules of this game? He couldn't run or pass or kick the ball away. The kick. It was possible to score on the kick. Field goals, they were called, worth 3 points each. Except that he had no kicker other than himself. That was only slightly better than nothing, considering his near bungle of his first attempt to punt. The moment he set up for a place kick instead of a punt, those black armored animals would be upon him. Even if he got the kickoff, even if he somehow scored, he would wind up crushed at the bottom of the pile of meat. There was not any great future in that. If by some fluke he scored several field goals, enough to win, he would still be so battered he would be at a serious disadvantage in other games of the tourney. It would really be better to forfeit this one. It took 2 losses to eliminate an entrant, so he could afford that gesture. No, he was not about to forfeit anything. If he lost, it would only be because he had been fairly beaten. Still, the lack seemed to be his best chance. A surprise punt on first or second down, catching the rifleman with his guard down. Then an attempt to force an error, an interception, or a fumble. Playing for the breaks. It would take nerve and luck and determination, but it was a chance. Stile's team received the kickoff. This time the ball bounced into the end zone and was brought out to his 20-yard line for play. Stile called for the punt, after a fake pass. His quarterback would simply fade back and hand the ball to Stile, then serve as interference to the others while Stile got the kickoff. It worked. Stile got a beautiful, for him, punt off, escaping unscathed himself. The ball was low and fast, skimming over the heads of the animals, bouncing and rolling rapidly onward. No one was near it. The rifleman, playing the backfield, was first to reach the ball. But the thing was still hopping crazily about, the way an unround and pointed ball was apt to do, as if it were a faithful representative of its crazy period of history, and it bounced off the citizen's knee. Now, according to the peculiarities of this sport, it was a live ball, and Stile's onrushing animals had the limited wit to pounce on it. There was a monstrous pileup, and Stile's team recovered the football on the 30-yard line of black. A 50-yard gain. "Nicely played," the rifleman said, smiling. "I was beginning to fear the game would be unconscionably dull." "No tourney game is dull," Stile said. "Sir?" Now he had the ball in good field position, but could he seize the opportunity to score? Stile still doubted it. He simply did not have the ability to advance the ball consistently, so he would have to attempt to score from this range. That meant a 40-yard field goal. No, Stile doubted he had the power or accuracy for that. He would merely be throwing the ball away, unless he could get closer to the goal. His androids evidently couldn't do that, and Stile himself was too small to carry it. The pass interception had shown that. This was one game where no advantage could be achieved from small size. Or could it? These android brutes were accustomed to dealing with creatures their own size, and were slow to adjust. An agile, acrobatic man his size, why not show them some of the tricks he could do? Stile was small, but no weakling, and the androids were programmed not to hurt real people. He just might turn that into an advantage. In the huddle, he had specific instructions for his center. You will hike the ball to me. Make sure you get it to me, for I am smaller than your regular quarterback. Then charge forward straddle-legged. I clarify. Hike the ball, then block forward and up, your feet spread wide. Do you understand? Dully, the android nodded. Stile hoped the creature would follow orders literally. These androids were the match of real people, physically, but science had not developed their brains to work as well as the humankind. Androids cast in petite female forms were said to be quite popular with some men, who considered their lack of wit to be an asset. Specialized androids were excellent for other purposes, such as sewer cleaning. It just happened that in this game, Stile had to push to the intellectual limit of the type. In a real game of football, as played on Earth centuries ago, such an android would have been fully competent. This was not that situation. The creature did as ordered. Stile took the ball, ducked down, and charged forward between the animal's spread legs. The slow-witted opposing androids did not realize what had happened. They continued to charge forward, looking for a ball carrier to tackle. Stile scooted ahead 5, 10, and finally 15 yards before the rifleman himself brought him down. "Beautiful play," the citizen said, as they bounced together on the turf, their light armor absorbing most of the shock of impact. With a 15-point lead, he could afford to be generous. But the growing stadium audience also cheered. Stile had his first down on the 15-yard line, but he knew better than to try the same stunt again. At any rate, he was now in field goal range for his kicking ability, except that he still did not relish getting crushed in the blitz that would converge on the place kicker. Then he dredged from his memory an alternative: the drop kick. Instead of having the ball held in place by another player for the kick, the kicker simply dropped it to the ground and kicked it on the bounce. A drop kick, unlike a punt, was a scoring kick. Its disadvantage was that it was less reliable than a place kick, since the bounce could go wrong. Its advantage was that it could be done on extremely short notice. Short enough, perhaps, to surprise the androids, and enable Stile to complete it before getting tackled and buried. He decided to try it. He took the ball as quarterback, faded back a few yards, then dropped it for the kick. The ball bounded up, and the androids ceased their charge, realizing that this differed from a punt. Stile watched with gratification as the football arced between the goalposts. It was wobbly and skewed, but within tolerance. The referee signaled the score. 3 points. "The drop kick!" the rifleman exclaimed. "I haven't seen one of those in years! Magnificent!" He seemed more pleased about it than Stile was. But now it was Stile's turn to kick off to the rifleman. He decided to gamble again. "Do you know the onside kick?" he asked his teammates. Blank stares were returned. Good. The animals had not been programmed for this nuance. Probably the other team's androids would not know it either, so could reasonably be expected to flub it. The rifleman would know it, but Stile intended to kick the ball away from him. He tried it, and it worked. Stile's team had possession of the football at midfield.
Oh, marvelous!
The rifleman exclaimed ecstatically. Back in the huddle, Number 1 will field the ball, Stile told the animals, referring to the rifleman's shirt designation. Charge him. Box him in, but do not tackle him. I will tackle him. Uncomprehending, the androids agreed. Stile punted on first down. This time he had the feel of it and hung the ball up high, giving his players time to get down to it before it landed. The rifleman, alert to this play, caught the ball himself, calling his own players in around him. Thus the two groups formed in a rough circle. Stile's animals trying to get past the rifleman's animals without actually contacting the rifleman. Perplexed by this seeming diffidence, the citizen started to run with the ball. That was when Stile shot between two of his own players, took a tremendous leap, and tackled the rifleman by the right arm where the football was tucked. He made no bruising body contact, for that would have brought a penalty call, but yanked hard on that arm. As the two twisted to the ground, the ball passed from the citizen's grasp to Stile's. Stile was, of course, adept at wresting control of objects from others. He had specialized in this maneuver for other types of games. Once again, his team had possession of the ball. Lovely, the rifleman said, with slightly less enthusiasm than before. The ball was now just inside the 20-yard line. Stile drop-kicked another field goal. Now he had 6 points, and 11 minutes remained in the game. He knew he would not get away with another onside kick. The rifleman would already have alerted his team to that. This time, Stile would have to play it straight and hope to stop the citizens' devastating drive. Stile kicked it deep, and it went satisfyingly far before being fielded by a black android. Stile's androids were alert to this routine situation, and they brought the carrier down on the 20-yard line. Now, Stile had to stifle the passing attack. He decided to concentrate on rushing the passer and hoping for an interception. He himself would cover one of the rifleman's receivers, while double covering the other with androids. This seemed to be effective. The rifleman faded back for his pass, did not like the situation, but did not want to run or get tackled. So he overthrew the ball, voiding any chance for an interception. According to the quaint conventions for this sport, all parties knew exactly what he was doing, and it mandated a penalty for deliberate grounding, but none was called. Because of deliberately grounding of the ball was done with discretion, it was presumed to be a throwing error instead of what it obviously was. Presumably, this sort of thing added luster to the game. On the second down, the rifleman tried a pass to the double-covered receiver, but two androids were better than one, and again it went incomplete. Good. One more such failure, and he'd have to turn the ball over on the kick. Stile was at last managing to stifle the citizen's passing attack. On third down, the rifleman rifled the ball directly to the receiver Stile was covering. He aimed it high to be out of Stile's reach, but reckoned without Stile's acrobatic ability. Stile leaped high to intercept it, and was banged aside by the receiver, who had not realized what he was going to do. No android would have leaped like that. A referee's flag went down. The penalty was offensive pass interference. Stile's team had the ball again. This time, the rifleman's congratulation was definitely perfunctory. The ball was on the black 35-yard line. Time remaining was 9 minutes. Those incomplete passes had expended very little time. Still, Stile was getting nervous. He really needed to break loose and score a touchdown. Number 81, can you handle a lateral? He asked. The the animal agreed after a brief pause for thought. Then follow me and be ready. Stile turned to a lineman. When the ball is hiked, you turn, pick me up, and heave me over the black line. He seemed to remember an ancient penalty for such a trick, but it was not part of the game rules. Duh, the android asked. The concept was too novel for his intellectual capacity. Stile repeated his instructions, making sure the animal understood what to do, if not why. When the ball was hiked, Stile tucked it into his elbow and stepped into his lineman's grasp. The android hurled him up and over. Stile had been given such a lift in the course of gymnastic stunts and was pretty much at home in the air. He flipped, rolled off a lineman's back, landed neatly on his feet, and charged forward toward the goal line. This time, however, the rifleman had a couple of guards in the backfield, and they intercepted Stile before he had gone more than 10 yards. Now, Stile lateraled to number 81, who was right where he was supposed to be. What these creatures did? They did well. The android caught the ball and bowled ahead for 8 more yards before being stopped. They were within kicking range again. Stile decided not to gamble on another running play. He drop-kicked another field goal. The score was now 15-9, with 8 minutes remaining. At this rate, he could do it, provided he had no bad breaks. Unfortunately, he was overdue for one of those. He had been playing extremely chancy ball. Should he try another onside kick? No, that would only cost him yardage at this stage. He had to make the rifleman travel as far across the field as possible, so that he had maximum opportunity to make an error. So, Stile played it straight. This time, he managed to put the ball all the way into the end zone. The rifleman put it into play on the 20-yard line. This time, wary of passing into Stile's double coverage, he handed it off to his runner. But the android proceeded without imagination and was downed at the line of scrimmage. Any play left purely to the animals was basically wasted time. The capacities of the androids had evidently been crafted for that. The human players had to make their physical and/or mental skills count. Now Stile was sure the citizen was beginning to sweat. The rifleman knew that if he failed to move the ball, he would have to turn it over, and then Stile would find some devious way to score. A touchdown and extra point would put Stile ahead in the closing minutes. But the citizen was unable to advance the ball. What was he to do? What could he do? He risked another pass to his double-covered android receiver. It was perfectly placed, threading between the defenders to reach its target. How that man could pass! But one defender managed to tip it, and the receiver did not catch it cleanly. The ball squirted out of his grasp, bounced on the ground, and one of Stile's animals, not realizing the ball was dead, fell on it. It was obviously an incomplete pass, but the referee signaled a fumble. Now it was Stile's ball on the 32-yard line. "Now wait," Stile protested. "That's a miscall. The receiver never had control of the ball." "Aren't you aware that these referees are programmed to make at least one major miscall per game?" the rifleman called to him. "That's to emulate the original style of play, back on Crazy Earth. You happen to be the beneficiary of that error." The referees were robots, of course. Stile hadn't noticed. They could be set at any level of competence. "But that's not luck. That's luck, not skill." "There's an element of luck in most games. That lends a special fascination. The human species loves to gamble. Play before you draw another delay of game penalty." The rifleman did not seem upset, perhaps because his change of possession was obviously no fault of his own. Hastily, Stile played. He accepted the hiked ball, faded back for a pass, found his receivers covered, saw 3 huge animals bearing down on him, dodged them all, circled behind one, and safely overthrew his covered receiver. The moment he released the ball, he hunched over as though still carrying it. The turning android saw that and grabbed him, not having seen the ball go. The tackle was bruising despite the armor, but at least the padding protected him from more than superficial abrasion. A flag went down. Roughing the passer. 15-yard penalty, first down. Once again, Stile was within field goal range. He drop-kicked again, of course. The audience cheered. The stadium was almost full now. News of this game was evidently spreading, but he had to keep his attention on the field. Now he had 12 points and 6 minutes to go. Maybe he could pull it out after all. But the rifleman had the ball again, and now he was determined. There were not going to be any more breaks or mistakes. Stile's misgivings were well taken. The rifleman shot his passes too high and fast for Stile to intercept, settling for swift, short gains. When Stile tried too hard, he got tagged for interference. Slowly, erratically, but inevitably, the citizen hammered out the yardage. On Stile's 30-yard line, the rifleman's first pass attempt failed. On second down, his run got nowhere. On third down, Stile gambled on a blitz, sending 8 of his animals in to overrun the quarterback before he could pass. It worked. The rifleman was sacked. Loss of yards. Now it was fourth down, and the rifleman had to kick out. He tried a place kick and a field goal, but was too far out. The ball fell short, to Stile's immense relief. Stile had the ball again, with 4 minutes remaining. Time enough, if he could move the ball. He moved it. He had his animals open a hole in the center, and he slipped through for several yards. He had his passer send a screen pass to him, and he dodged and raced up the sideline for several more yards. He was wise to the ways of the androids now. He knew their little individual foibles. Some were faster than others, some less stupid. One android did not have the wit to outmaneuver another, but Stile did. He could get past them, so long as he did it himself, not delegating the job to an animal of his own. So long as he carried the ball himself, he could progress. That was the key. That was why the rifleman had succeeded so well in moving the ball at the outset, while Stile floundered. The rifleman had drawn on his own abilities, not limited by those of the androids. Now Stile was doing it too, and had been doing it every time he kicked. Now, so late in the game, understanding came. It really was a game of 2, not of 22. But this was bruising. The constant exertion and battering were taking it out of him, and Stile could not maintain the drive. It stalled out on the rifleman's 40-yard line. Too far for another field goal. Stile had to punt, regretfully. He went for the coffin corner, angling the ball out of bounds at the 4-yard line. That forced the rifleman to play in his own end zone. The citizen was showing overt nervousness now. He did not like being backed up this way. He tried a pass, but it was wobbly and off target, incomplete. Now it was time to strike. Stile caught the arm of his center as the lines reformed. "Make a hole to spring me through," he said, and the creatures nodded. The androids were slow thinkers, but they did orient somewhat on the needs of their supervisors. This one now understood what Stile wanted. When the ball was hiked, the android shouldered into his opposite number, lifting him entirely off the ground. Stile scooted through, so low that his flexing knees hurt, and emerged directly in front of the rifleman. "Oh no!" the rifleman exclaimed. Losing his poise, he tried to run from Stile instead of throwing the ball away. It was a mistake. He moved right into a pocket of white linemen and was downed in his own end zone. It was a safety. 2 points. The score was now 15-14, with 2 minutes left to play, and Stile's team would get the ball. It was put into play by a free kick from the rifleman's 20-yard line. The kicker, under no pressure from the opposing line, got off a booming spiral that lofted high and far. One of Stiles' receivers took it on his 30-yard line and ran it all of 2 yards before getting buried. Now Stile was highly conscious of the clock. He dared not give up the ball again, for the rifleman would surely consume the remaining time in a slow drive and win by a single point. But how could Stile move it down to field goal range against the desperation defense he knew he would encounter? Answer: he had to do it himself. He would get battered, but it was the only way. "Run interference for me," he told his 3 most competent animals. "You 2 in front, you behind. Right end run. You 2 receivers go out for a fake pass. And you runner, you fake a run to the left." He was pulling out all the stops. If the rifleman anticipated his strategy, he would swamp Stile with a blitz. It had to be risked. But the citizen, too, was tiring. He was in fit condition, but Stile was not merely fit. He was an excellent athlete in peak condition, strongly motivated. His toughness and endurance were counting more heavily now. The citizen stayed well back, avoiding physical contact when he could. In effect, he had dropped off his team. That meant that not only did Stile have 11 effective players to 10, but he had the most animated team. Now he could put together a sustained drive. Theoretically. His animals blocked and Stile ran, and it worked. He made several yards before his escort fell in assorted tangles. Now a huge black android pounced on him for the kill, and Stile cut in under the brute and threw him with a solid shoulder boost. It was partly the disparity of size that enabled Stile to come in low, and partly surprise that put him in close instead of where the android expected him. The creature went tumbling across Stile's back and rolled to the turf. Suddenly, Stile was in the relative clear, and still on his feet. He accelerated forward, drawing on his reserves of energy, determined to make the most of his opportunity. Dimly, he heard the roar of the crowd, excited by the dramatic run. The stadium had been constantly filling, and now more than half the seats were filled, and it was a fair-sized chamber, sufficient for perhaps 1,000. Stile knew these spectators didn't care who won the game. They merely responded to the unfolding drama. Still, their applause encouraged him. His bruises and fatigue seemed to fade, and he shot ahead at full speed. 5 yards, 10, 15, 20. In the end, it was the rifleman who caught him. The man was not to be tricked by a martial arts throw. After all, he was a former tourney winner who had to be conversant with all forms of physical combat. He caught one arm and swung him around and down. He tried to wrest the ball away, but Stile against that, and plowed into the turf without giving it up. He was now on the rifleman's 45-yard line down. His ploy had paid off handsomely. On the next play, Stile tried a short pass from android to android, while he himself faked another run. This was not as spectacularly successful as his last play, but it was good for 8 more yards. Most of the attention had been on Stile's fake, and the rifleman's pass defense had loosened up. Then a quarterback sneak, good for 3 more yards, and a first down on the 34-yard line. He was getting near field goal range, but now he had only 30 seconds remaining. With no timeouts, he had no time to spare for fancy planning. "Give me the ball," he said. "Protect me." But this time he got nowhere. His strategy had been too vague. 15 seconds remaining. Time for one final desperation measure. "Take a lateral," he told his primary pass receiver. "Step clear and lateral back to me." Stile took the hiked ball, stepped back, lateraled to his receiver, and shrugged at the onrushing tacklers as they struggled to avoid him. The rifleman didn't want any game penalties stopping the clock at this point. The android lateraled back. Stile stood alone, having been forgotten by the tacklers. As a pileup formed about the pass receiver, Stile dodged forward, passing confused androids of both teams who somehow thought the play had ended and were slow to reorient. He cut to the left, getting clear of the central glut, then forward again. He had made it to field goal range. Then he heard the final gun. He had used up all his time in the course of his maneuvering, and now the game was over. There would be no more plays. No chance to drop kick the winning field goal. Stile slowed to a walk, disconsolate. So close, only to fail. To reach the 15-yard line in the clear and have to quit, defeated by a single point. Then, from the front tier of seats, he heard Sheen's voice. "Run, you idiot!" And he saw the animals of both teams converging on him. Suddenly, he realized that the game was not quite over. The play was still in session. Until he was tackled, it was not finished. But the rifleman, more alert to the situation than Stile had been, was now between him and the goal line. The citizen was calling directions to his troops. Stile knew he could not make it all the way. He began running across the field, toward the center, where more of his own animals were. "Protect me!" he bawled. Dully, they responded. They started blocking off the pursuit. Stile cut back toward the goal line, making it to the 10-yard line, the 5. A black android crashed through the interference and caught Stile from behind. Stile whomped down in a forward fall, and the ball squirted from his grasp. A fumble at the worst possible time. The androids knew what to do with a loose ball. Animals of both teams belly flopped to cover it. In a moment, the grandest pileup of the game developed. The whistle blew, ending the play and the game. The delirious cheering of the crowd abruptly stilled. Obviously, the ball had been recovered, but where and by whom? It was impossible to tell. Slowly, under the supervision of the referees, the androids were unpiled. The bottom one wore a white suit and lay just within the end zone. Stile had 6 more points. Now the crowd went absolutely crazy. Serfs and citizens alike charged onto the field. "Let's get out of here before we're both trampled to death," the rifleman exclaimed, heading for the exit tunnel. "Yes, sir," Stile agreed. "By the way, congratulations. It was an excellent game." "Thank you, sir." They drew up inside the tunnel. Here they were safe. The crowd was attacking the goalposts in some kind of insane tradition that went back before Planet Proton had been colonized. "I have not forgotten our private wager," the rifleman said. "You played fair and tough and made a remarkable game of it, and you prevailed. I shall be in touch with you at another time." "Thank you, sir," Stile said, unable to think of anything better. "Now, let's get out of these uniforms." "Yes, sir." Then Sheen was trotting toward them, her breasts bouncing handsomely. She was ready to assume control of Stile's remaining time in this frame. It would be several days before all of the round 1 matches cleared, since there were 512 of them. But Stile would not be able to linger long in Proton frame. He had to get back to Phaze and find out how to handle the Unicorn Herd Stallion in combat. Otherwise, his tenure in Phaze could become even shorter than his tenure in Proton. But Sheen was aware of all of this. She took him in tow, stripping him of his armor in literal and figurative fashion. Stile was able to tune out the contemporaneous proceedings. How good it was to have a friend like Sheen here, and one like Nasa there. All right. That was Chapter 3. Chapter 3 was a long chapter. An exciting first match of the tourney. I guess need to take a quick bio break, and then I will be right back. I will return momentarily. And I'm back. Yes. Reading lots means that you have to drink lots. When you drink lots, you have to pee lots. But all good. All right, here we go. Let's get ourselves into Chapter 4. Chapter 4: The Little People. Stile stepped through the curtain into the deep and pleasant forest of Phaze. He recovered his clothing, dressed, then hummed up an ambiance of magic. He could signal Nasa with a spell, and she would come for him. Then it occurred to him that this would consume time that could be better spent otherwise. Why not experiment and discover whether he could indeed transport himself? He pondered a moment, finding himself quite nervous, then sing-songed the spell. Transport this man to the Blue Castle span. It was not good verse, but that didn't matter. Abruptly, he stood in the castle court. He felt dizzy and nauseous. Either he had done an inexpert job, or transporting himself was not good procedure. Certainly, he would not try that again in a hurry. It had gotten him here, but at the expense of his feeling of equilibrium and well-being. Nasa was in the court, nibbling on the magic patch of bluegrass. Every bite she took was immediately restored, so there was no danger of overgrazing, despite the smallness of the patch. She looked up the moment he appeared, her ears swiveling alertly. Then she bounded across to join him. "Careful! Thou wilt spear me!" he protested, grabbing her about the neck and hanging on to steady himself. She snorted. She had perfect control of her horn, and would never skewer something she didn't mean to, or miss something she aimed at. She blew a questioning note. Nice of thee to inquire, Stile said, ruffling her sleek black mane with his fingers. He was feeling better already. There was an healing ambiance about unicorns. But it's nothing. Next time, I'll have thee carry me. Thou dost a better job. The unicorn made another note of query. Oh, that, he replied. Sheen took care of me and got me to the game on time. I had to match with a citizen, a former tourney winner. He nearly finished me. She blew a sour note. No, he was a top gamesman, Stile assured her. A player of my caliber. It was like doing battle in this frame with another adept. But I had a couple of lucky breaks and managed to win in the last moment. Now he's going to help me find out who, there, is trying to wipe me out. He tapped his own knee meaningfully. And of course, once we settled with the herd stallion, we'll set out to discover who killed me here in Phaze. I don't like having anonymous enemies. His expression hardened. Nay, I like that not at all. The Lady Blue appeared. She wore a bathing suit and was, as always, so lovely it hurt him. It was not that she was of full figure, for actually she was less so than Sheen, but that somehow she was exquisitely integrated, aesthetically, in face and form and manner. The term lady described her exactly, and she carried its ambiance with her regardless what she wore. Welcome back, my lord, she murmured. Thank thee, lady. He had been absent only a day, but the shift of frame was so drastic that it seemed much longer. Thy friend Hulk has returned. Excellent, Stile said. He was somewhat stiff from the bruising football game, but glad to be back here and quite ready to receive the Oracle's advice. Thou art weary, the lady said. Let me lay my hands on thee. Not necessary, Stile demurred, but she stopped him and ran her soft hands across his arms and around his neck, and where they touched, his remaining discomfort faded. She kneaded the tight muscles of his shoulders, and they loosened. She pressed his chest, and his breathing eased. She stroked his hair, and the subconscious headache became non-existent. The Lady Blue was no adept, but she did possess subtle and potent healing magic, and the contact of her fingers was bliss to him. He did not want to love her, yet, for that would be foolhardy. But only iron discipline kept him from sliding into that emotion at a time like this. Her touch was love. I would that my touch would bring the joy to thee that thy touch does to me, Stile murmured. She stopped immediately. It was a silent rebuke that he felt keenly. She wanted no closeness with him. Not while she mourned her husband. Perhaps not ever. Stile could not blame her. They moved on into the castle proper. The lady preceded him to the bath, where Hulk soaked in a huge tile tub set flush with the floor, like that of a proton hammam. The huge man saw the lady, nodded, then in an afterthought sought ineffectively to cover himself.
I keep forgetting this is not Proton, he muttered sheepishly. Men don't go naked in mixed company here.
Thou art clothed in water, the lady reassured him. We be not overly concerned with dress here. My present suit blue material momentarily. I have myself stood naked before a crowd and thought the animals wear clothing in their natural forms, and oft not in their human shapes. Even so, I would not have intruded, but that my lord is here, and needs must be informed immediately.
That's right, Hulk agreed. Do thou step outside a moment, lady, and I'll get right out of this.
No need, Stile said. I am here. He had been behind Hulk, whose attention had been distracted by the prior entry of the lady.
Oh, okay. I have the Oracle's answer, but thou dost not have much time. Stile, may I talk to thee privately?
If the lady is amenable, Stile agreed. And what is this, unfit for mine ears? The Lady Blue demanded. Well, I know you two are not about to exchange male humor. Is there danger?
Hulk looked guilty. He used his fingers to make a ripple in the bathwater. There may be, lady.
The lady looked at Stile, silently daring him to send her away. She called him lord and deferred to him in the presence of others, for the sake of appearances, but he had no private power over her. The lady has suffered loss already, Stile said. I am no fit replacement. Yet if the oracle indicates danger for me, she is rightfully concerned. She must not again be forced to run the blue demesne without the powers of an adept.
If thou wishest,
Hulk agreed dubiously.
The oracle says thou canst only defeat the herd stallion by obtaining the platinum flute.
The platinum flute? Stile repeated, perplexed.
I never heard of it either,
Hulk said, making further idle ripples with his hand. The ripples traveled to the edges of the tub, then bounced back to cross through the new ripples being generated. Stile wondered passingly whether the curtain that separated the frames of science and magic was in any way a similar phenomenon.
But there was another querist there, a vampire.
The likes of us have naught to do with the likes of them, the Lady Blue protested. Or with the unicorns or werewolves? Stile asked her, smiling wryly. She was silent, unmollified. Certainly her husband had not had much association with such creatures. The free presence of unicorns and werewolves in the Blue Domain dated from Stile's ascendance. He felt this was an improvement, but the lady was evidently more conservative.
Actually, he was not a bad sort at all, Hulk said. I lost my way going in, and he flew by in bat form, saw I was in trouble, and changed to man form and offered to help. He hadn't realized I was human. He thought I was a small giant or an ogre, and those pseudo-men sort of look out for each other. I think he was rather intrigued by my motorcycle, too. Not many contraptions like that in Phaze. I was afraid I was in for the fight of my life when I realized what kind of creature he was. But he told me they only take the blood of animals, which they normally raise for the purpose and treat well. In war, they suck the blood of enemies, but that's a special situation. They never bother friends. He laughed and said it wasn't true that people bitten by vampires become vampires themselves. That's a foul myth propagated by envious creatures. Maybe that story originated from a misinterpretation of their love rights, when a male and female vampire share each other's blood. The way he told it, it almost sounded good. A fundamental act of giving and accepting. I guess if I loved a vampire lady, I'd let her suck. He broke off abruptly, embarrassed. I didn't say that well. What I mean is... Stile laughed, and even the lady smiled briefly. There is no shame in love, any form, Stile said. Sure, Hulk agreed. I got to talking with him, and the more I knew him, the better I liked him. He drew me a map in the dirt so I could locate the Oracle's palace without getting in trouble. Then he changed back to a bat and flew off. And, the route he pointed me out for me was a good one. I made it to the Oracle in a couple more hours, when it could have been days the way I had been going.
Hulk made another wave on the water, one that swamped the pattern of wavelets.
I'm finding it harder not to believe in magic. I saw that man change. I saw him fly. He was there when I arrived, and showed me the room where the Oracle was. Just a tube sticking out of the wall. I felt sort of silly, but I went ahead and asked, how can Stile defeat? I forgot to use thy Phaze title, but it was too late, and it didn't seem to matter to the Oracle. How can Stile defeat the unicorn herd stallion in fair combat at the Unolympics? And it replied, borrow the platinum flute. I couldn't understand that and asked for clarification, but the tube was dead.
The oracle has no patience with fools, the lady said. It answers only once, and considers all men fools. No offence to thee, ogre.
Hulk smiled. It seemed he had been nicknamed after the monster he most resembled, and he did not mind. So I discovered, but I feared I had failed thee, Stile.
I was as baffled when it told me to know thyself, Stile said. My friend Curlgeyer, the werewolf, was told to cultivate blue and could not understand that either. We all have trouble with oracular answers, but they always make sense in the end. Not always desired sense, the Lady Blue agreed. When it told me none by one, I thought it spouted nonsense. But now I know to my grief what. She turned away, but Stile had glimpsed the agony that transfixed her face before she hid it. He had not realized that she had ever been to the Oracle. That answer must have related to the death of her husband. Hulk filled in the awkward pause.
I talked to Vaudlevel Vampire, that's his name, and we compared notes. It seemed he had asked the Oracle how to help his son, who was allergic to blood. That's no joke to a vampire.
I should think not, Stile exclaimed. Hulk was quite serious.
They don't live on blood all the time, but they need it to be able to change to their bat form and fly. The blood facilitates the magic. So this boy couldn't keep up with the family if, well, I guess I'd be concerned too, in that situation.
Of course, Stile agreed, sorry that he had ever considered any humorous side to this.
But all the Oracle told him was, finesse yellow. That made him furious, because he said Yellow is an adept, and vampires don't deal with adepts. They live near one, and they're afraid of her and leave her strictly alone. But if they did have truck with adepts, they wouldn't try to cheat them or anyone else, and Yellow was the very worst one anyway. Several of their number have been trapped by her and sold to other adepts, who spell them into blind loyalty and use them for spying and for terrorizing other captives. Gives the whole tribe a bad name. So he was going home without an answer he could use. I couldn't help him. I don't know anything about adepts. It was too bad.
He sounds like a creature of character, Stile said. Why should the Oracle suggest to such a creature that he cheat? That's the same as no answer. Finesse is not the same as cheat, the lady pointed out. It implies some artifice or devious mechanism, not dishonesty.
Vaudlevel is a very forthright person, Hulk said. No tricks in him. Still, he helped me. He told me that most of the metal tools and weapons and musical instruments of Phaze are made by the little people, the tribes of dark elves, and that some worked with bone, and some with wood, and some with silver, or with gold, or with platinum. So probably if thou canst find the right tribe of elves...
The little folk are not easy to find, the Lady Blue said. They dwell mainly in the Purple Mountains, and they dislike normal men and deal with them seldom. Most of all they detest adepts. When my lord desired an excellent musical instrument, he could not go to them, but had to trade with a hawkman who had a connection across the curtain. He said he would like to be in touch with the little folk, but that they wanted naught he had to offer.
So Vaudlevel informed me, Hawk said. That's what I meant about danger. It seems that the more precious the metal a tribe works with, the less use that tribe has for men, because men try to steal their artifacts. Especially they hate big men. I'd be dead the moment I set foot in their territory. And the Blue Adept, he shook his head. So my oracle answer isn't much use either. But I report it to thee for what it's worth, and hope this doesn't cause mischief.
Stile was already deep in thought. The advice of the oracle is always practical, if obscure. One has to work to understand it, usually, but it surely makes sense for both me and the vampire. And him I may be able to help, in return for his help to thee.
I had hoped thou wouldst see it that way, Hulk admitted. It really is thy mission he tried to facilitate.
I like this not, the lady said. Thou meanest to go among the little folk.
Perhaps, Stile agreed. That's the mischief Hulk feared, knowing mine inclination. But first I must tackle the matter nearer at hand. It will take me a moment to devise a suitable spell. Let's meet in the courtyard in 10 minutes.
No spell will take thee safely to the fastness of the little folk, she protested. Like the unicorns, they resist magic. Better thou goest among trolls or goblins. There at least thou wouldst have a fair chance.
I had in mind summoning the Yellow Adept.
The Yellow Adept? She cried, horrified. In these demesne?
I swore never to return to her demesne, so must needs she visit mine. Thus do I finesse the restriction. Come on, we have to give Hulk a chance to get dressed. Stile led the way out. The lady was spluttering, but offered no further resistance. They met in due course in the courtyard. The lady had evidently communicated the situation to the unicorn, for Nasa was moving her horn about angrily and snorting just beneath the level of meaning. Stile played his harmonica to bring the magic ambience. Then he intoned, Yellow Adept, I ask of thee, come to the blue demesne, to me. Abruptly, the yellow hag was there before them.
Blue, methought thou we were at quits, she snapped. Seekest thou war between adepts?
By no means, Yellow. I only wish to bargain with thee, to mutual advantage, and may not invade thy demesne again. Her somewhat beady eyes peered about.
There is that, my handsome. Thou art a man of thy literal word. But I am not garbed for socializing. Give me leave to freshen up first.
And she felt about her baggy old dress, searching for a potion. Allow me, since thou art my guest. Stile played a bar of music, then intoned. While yellow visits Castle Blue, grant her youth, image, and hue. In place of the old crone stood a ravishingly beautiful young woman with an hourglass configuration and long golden yellow tresses, wearing a marvelously fetching evening gown. Hulk's jaw fell, and the Lady Blue's eyes widened. Nasa merely snorted despairingly. She had seen it before. Lovely Yellow brought out a vial, shook at a drop, and caught it as it formed into a mirror.
Oh, thou shouldst not, thou darling man. Yes, thou hast recaptured it perfectly, my delicious. Yet she remains a witch, the Lady Blue said tightly.
Nasa snorted agreement. Yellow shot a glance at them.
Witch, thou sayest? And aren't we all, regardless of our shapes, our magic? What chance does any man have against a vamp of whatever color?
None, Hulk muttered. Nasa made as if to stab him with her horn, and he hopped out of the way. What I wish is this, Stile said briskly. There is a vampire man, Vaudlevel, whose son is allergic to blood. The oracle told him to finesse Yellow. He refuses to deal.
Aye, I have a potion to cure that malady, Yellow agreed. But what does he offer in return?
Nothing, Stile said. The vampire folk are wary of thee. For what reason, I do not pretend to comprehend.
She waggled a pretty finger at him warningly, in much the way the rifleman had in Protan. Play not the innocent with me, pretty man. I have back orders for bats galore. Though I dare say their fear of female adepts derives somewhat from propinquity, since they reside near one the canines would term woman. Hulk stifled a chuckle. Insults were very much a matter of viewpoint here. Vod level will not deal with thee, Stile said evenly. But I will. If thou wouldst trade favors with me, as one professional to another, this is the favor I crave. What has the bat done lately for thee? He helped my friend Hulk, who was on a mission for me. Never did the bat ask for mine assistance, nor does he know it is coming. She shook her head. The machinations of honor and friendship are a fascination to the likes of me. Thy generosity to animals will cost thee yet, Blue. She glanced at Nasa, whose ears angled quickly back. Yet, 'tis a true finesse that does appeal to me. My livelihood is in dealing and wheeling, and I will deal with thee. The bat shall have his potion. I thank thee, witch. And what favor dost thou crave in return? She considered prettily. I could wish that thou wouldst come to see me, as once I thought thou wouldst. Her eyes traveled to the Lady Blue, who gazed disdainfully away, and back again to Nasa, whose nostrils were beginning to steam. Yet thine oath forbids, and if it did not, I think others would say nay, or nay. Now a small jet of fire shot from Nasa's nostril, and the tip of her horn made a tiny motion suggestive of mayhem. Even so, Stile agreed, straight-faced. He despised Yellow's business of trapping and selling live animals, but he rather respected her personally. A romantic alliance was certainly out of the question, as well she knew. Yellow was only teasing the competition. Such light-hearted malice was no doubt more of a pleasure for the men to note than to the females against whom it was directed. Then methinks I will take it on the cuff, Yellow decided. Some day, when I am in some minor need, and call on thee for aid. Agreed, Stile said, provided only that the service violates no ethic of mine, and I am then alive. There is that. Thou hast a veritable storm cloud of a future. She pondered again. Then let me protect mine investment, and give thee a potion. She fished a tiny bottle out of her bodice and presented it. Stile accepted it, disregarding Nasa's fiery snort. If I may ask? No secret, my scrumptious. This elixir renders the wearer less nauseous to the elven folk. Thou vixen! Stile exclaimed. Thou conniving wench! Thou wert aware of my mission all the time. Even so, on all accounts, she said, though I prefer the term foxy to vixen. She vanished.
Some company thou keepest,
Hulk remarked appreciatively.
She is foxy.
Or bitchy, the Lady Blue muttered as she and Nasa walked stiffly away. Stile smiled. She's not a bad sort, considering that she really is a hag and a witch. She really did look like that, century or so ago when she was young. He considered briefly. Hulk, I don't have much time for the probable magnitude of this mission, so I'll set off for the Purple Mountains this afternoon, as soon as I do some spot research to pinpoint the platinum working elves.
I'll go with thee.
Nay, friend, thy appearance would only antagonize these folks, and I go not to quarrel, but to borrow. I need thee to guard the Lady Blue, as thou hast done so ably before. Hulk frowned.
I prefer not to do that, Stile.
Stile was perplexed. Thou likest it not here? I would not hold thee.
I like it well here. That is the problem.
Something tells me I am being opaque about something.
Aye,
Thou dost not get along with the Lady Blue?
the lady is a wonderful person.
Then I don't see.
Thou needest an oracle?
Stile shook his head.
I must.
The big man paced the courtyard.
Thou and I strike others as quite different, the giant and the dwarf. Yet we are similar. The same age, the same culture, similar game skills, similar honor.
He paused.
Similar taste in women.
Stile began to get the drift. Thou didst like Sheen at the first sight of her, and thou dost get along great with Nasa.
Yes, but for their special natures.
Hulk shrugged.
The Lady Blue is another matter. It befits me not to guard her any more.
Now Stile began pacing. Thou knowest she is not mine.
She sure as hell isn't mine,
Hulk exploded.
She may not be thine now, but she is destined for thee and no other. Thou art the Blue Adept, the keeper of these domain, and she is a Lady Blue. She is the finest woman I have known. Were there another like her?
There is another like her, Stile said, remembering Sheen's comment. And I owe thee for the manner in which thou hast given up thine only oracle answer to my need. The two men exchanged glances, a remarkable notion dawning.
Another? In Proton, Hulk said. Of course. Her alternate self. But that one too should be.
Nay, not mine. I cannot love two.
With all the qualities I have seen, but versed in Proton culture.
Hulk smiled, liking the notion.
Then thou wouldst not oppose?
That Proton lady sure as hell is not mine, Stile said, smiling as he echoed Hulk's expression. Go to Proton. It is a different frame. Thou knowest thou canst never bring her here.
Yet, even for brief visits, it is all I could ask.
Cross the curtain. Talk to Sheen. Her friends will locate the lady for thee. Hulk nodded. He stopped before Stile and put forth his hand. Stile shook it gravely, knowing this was their parting. Hulk would not come to the Blue Domain again. Stile felt a certain smoldering resentment that the big man had taken an interest in this particular woman, and a certain relief that there was in this case a solution. A certain guilt for both the resentment and the relief. Hulk was a good man. He deserved the best, and the best was the Lady Blue. Her Proton alternate surely had similar qualities. So this was a triumph of fortune and common sense. Yet it bothered him. He was simply not as generous in his private heart as he was externally. He had some growing to do yet. Now he had no guard for the Lady Blue. He could not leave her alone for any length of time. Whatever enemy had struck down Stile's alternate self, the true Blue Adept would surely strike again now that it was known the Blue Adept had been reconstituted. Stile had been constantly devising and rehearsing spells and strategies to deal with such an attack, and felt reasonably confident he could handle the situation. But suppose the enemy took the Lady Blue hostage and used her against Stile? He could not risk that. While he pondered, the lady reappeared. The ogre prepares to depart. Know ye why? I know, Stile said. I like this naught. How did she feel about this arrangement? He is a good man, worthy of the likes of thee, as I am not. If she grasped his hidden meaning, she gave no sign. Worth is not the issue. I have a premonition of doom about him. I confess to being uneasy. I thought it was jealousy or guilt. Those two, she agreed, and then he was sure she understood. But she did not elaborate. He changed the subject. Now I fear to leave thee here alone, yet must I seek the flute, lest mine enemy move against me. Nasa will go with me. Is it security thou seekest, or vengeance? Stile grimaced, looking at her. How is it thou knowest me so well? Thou art very like my love. Would he not have sought vengeance? For himself, nay. For those he held dear. She halted, and he suspected she was remembering her vision of the fiery destruction of the trolls who had wiped out the Blue Adept's village. Then she met his gaze again. Without Hulk or Nasa, the blue domain be not safe for me now. I must go with thee to the Purple Mountains. Lady, it may be dangerous. More dangerous with thee and thy magic than without thee? She inquired archly. Have I misjudged thee after all? Stile looked askance at her. I had thought thou dost not crave my company. For the sake of the good work done by the Blue Adept, thou callest me lord, but in private we know it is not so. I do not mean to impose my presence on thee more than necessary. And with that understanding, may not the lady accompany the lord? Stile sighed. He had made due protests against a prospect that, in fact, delighted him as much as it made him nervous and guilty. Of course she may. The lady rode a pale blue mare, the offspring of the foal of the hinny and the blue stallion. As she had described, this mare's color was mainly an echo of the blue harness, but the effect was there. The blue stallion had been alive but aging when the Blue Adept was killed. The horse, it was understood, had died of grief. Stile rode Nasa. He had never ridden another steed since taming her. No horse could match her performance. But it was more than that. Much more. They crossed the field south of the Blue Castle and entered the forest adjacent to the Purple Mountain Range. Soon they were in the foothills. According to Stile's references, the geographical tomes collected by his other self, the tribe of the Dark Elves who worked platinum lived on a mountain about 50 miles east of where the convenient curtain access to Proton was. The animals knew the way, once it had been determined. Nasa had ranged these lands for years and knew the location by description, though she was not conversant with the actual elven demesne. Here the lay of the land was gentle, and the air balmy, with patchwork clouds making the sunshine intermittent. The ride became tedious, despite the pleasure of the surroundings. Had Stile been riding alone, he would have slept, trusting Nasa to carry him safely, or played his harmonica, or simply have talked to the unicorn. But the presence of the Lady Blue in her natural splendor inhibited him. It was across this country I rode the hinny, so long it seems ago, she remarked. Stile found no appropriate response. He rode on in silence, wishing that the tragedy of his other self did not lie between them. The hinny, she repeated musingly. How I miss that fine animal. This was safer ground. How is she now? 10 years is a fair span in the life of a horse, about 30 of ours, but not interminable. Oh, of course thou knowest not, the lady said somberly. The hinny was bred by the blue stallion, and returned to her wilderness fastness alone. The blue lad went back to his business, about which we inquired not, but which I believe was the meticulous construction of the Blue Castle. I remained with my family and with Snowflake, the white foal we had rescued. Sometimes out in the fields we thought we glimpsed the hinny, and our hearts yearned toward her, but never came she nigh. Yet I was ill at ease. The revealed identity of my erstwhile companion, the blue lad, astounded me, and I was shamed. Yet I was intrigued, too, and potentially flattered by his suit. I remembered the vision I had while he played his music, the lady in the blue moon, and the subtle appeal of that notion grew. Later I learned that he had gone to inquire the identity of his ideal wife, and the oracle had named me. It had for once not obscure or circuitous, or capable of alternate interpretation. It had told him exactly where and when to find me. Hence he had come at the designated moment, extremely fortuitous for me, as I hung dangling in the clutch of the troll, and preserved my life when else it would have ended there. He had done all that he had done only to win my favour, though I was his by right from the moment he rescued me, and I only an ignorant peasant girl.
The oracle knew better, Stile murmured. Thy lord's legacy lives on in thee, when else it would have perished. She continued as if she had not heard him.
Ah, what a foolish girl was I in that time! Long and long was it before ever I gave him the third thee.
I beg thy pardon, lady. I don't follow. She gestured negligently with one hand.
Of course thou art from another culture, so I needs must inform thee. In Phaze, when a person loves another and wishes to have it known without obligation, she omits the statement and repeats only the object, thee, 3 times. Then the other may do as he wishes, without reproach.
I don't understand, Stile said. Just say to a person, the. Nasa nearly bucked him off as she drowned him out with a blast from her horn.
Say it not carelessly, nor in jest, the lady reproached him. It has the force of an oath.
Shaken, Stile apologized. I have much to learn yet of this culture. I thank thee, lady, for educating me, and thee, Nasa, for preventing me from compromising myself ignorantly.
But it would not have been a lie if he had said it to the lady. This was a battle all but lost at the outset. Still, it would have put her in an awkward situation. When next I saw the Hinny, the lady continued blithely, she was in a sad state. Gravid, she had been beset by cowardly predators, jackals, and was nigh unto death. She limped to our gate, remembering me, and I screamed and roused my father. Never did I see him so angry, for the Hinny had been his admiration since the instant he saw her first. He took his cudgel and beat off all the curs that harried her, while I tried to help her. But all was for naught. She had lost so much blood, and expended her last store of vitality reaching us, and the Hinny died at our door. Then did I remember the spell the blue lad had left me. Blue to me, I summon thee, I cried, and he was there. When he saw the Hinny, he gave a great cry of agony and fell upon her, taking her head in his arms, and the tears flowed down his face. But she was dead, her open eyes seeing naught, and all his magic availed naught. The lad brought out his harmonica and played a tune, wondrously sad. And 2 moons clouded over, and the sun faded, and a shimmer formed in the air between us. It made a picture, and it showed the Hinny, as she had been in life, great with foal, grazing near the wood. Then a pack of jackals charged, a foul horde, surely ill-contempt curs of scant individual courage, like to wolves as goblins be to men, seeking to overrun their quarry by sheer mass. She leaped away, but the weight of the foal within her made her ponderous, and somehow her front feet stumbled, causing her to fall and roll, and the brutes were on her in a motley pile, ripping at her flesh, tearing at her ears and tail. She struggled to her feet, but they hung on her like despicable leeches, and her precious blood was flowing. Gashed and weakening, she struggled out of that wood, the jackals constantly at her feet, leaping at her, trying to drag her down again, so that she left a trail of blood. So at last she came to me, and I saw myself scream and throw my hands to my head, reacting hysterically instead of helping her. And then my father came with his cudgel, and the magic vision faded. My father stood beside me, watching the sorrow of Blue, and indeed we shared it. Then did I comprehend the third of the great qualities about the Blue Adept that were to be the foundation of my love for him: his music, his power, and his abiding love for— she hesitated momentarily— for equines. Stile realized she had been about to say horses and had reconsidered, from deference to Nasa. At last the blue lad rose, and it was as if the blood had been drained from him as it had been from the hinny. Because her knees were weak, the jackals caught her, he said. The knees she sacrificed for me. And yet I could not say nay, for I had seen it happen. Yet can I do somewhat, he continued, and there was that in him that frightened me, and I began to get a glimmer of the meaning of the sorrow and anger of an adept. Turn you both about, lest ye see what pleases ye not. And my father, wiser than I, took mine arm and bade me turn with him. There was a pause, then sweet, bitter music as the lad played his harmonica, then the muttering of an incantation, and an explosion of heat and odour. We turned again, and the corpse of the hinny was gone, blasted by Blue's music, and in the swirling smoke the lad stood, holding in his arms a newborn foal, light blue in hue. Thy hinny be dead, but her foal lives, he said. This is why she came to thee. Then before we could properly react, he addressed my father. This foal is birthed before her time. Only constant, expert care can save her. I am no healer. She requires more than magic. I beg thee, sir, to take her off my hands, rendering that which only thou canst give, that she may survive and be what she can be. My father stood bemused, not instantly comprehending the request. The hinny came to thee, the lad continued, knowing thou couldst help her. More than all else, she wanted her foal to live and to be happy and secure. No right have I to ask thee this favour of thee, knowing it just before free of this hinny's faith. And he stepped forward, holding forth the foal, and I knew my father was thinking of the hinny, the finest mare of any species he had ever beheld, and of the blue stallion, the finest stud, and seen in this foal a horse like none in Phaze, worth a fortune no man could measure, and I realized that in the guise of a request, the lad was probably a gift of what was most dear to my father's dream. It was Blue's way. My father took the foal in silence and bore him to our stable, for she needed immediate care. I remained facing the lad, and something heaved within my breast. Not love, gratitude. I knew that, though he looked to be a lad and was in fact a nefarious magician, he was also a worthy man, and he inclined his head to me, and then he walked away toward the forest where the jackals had attacked the hinny, and in a little while a brilliant burst of light there, and that whole forest was aflame, and I heard the jackals screaming as they burned. And I remembered how he had destroyed the trolls, and was appalled at this act of vengeance. Yet did I understand it also, for I too loved the hinny. And who among us withholds our power when that which is dear to us is ravaged? The power of an adept is a terrible thing, yet the emotion was the same as mine. No creature aggravates an adept but at the peril of his kind. Yet when I rode Starshine out to that region, I found the forest alive and green. Only the charred skeletons of the jackals remained. None other had been hurt. I marveled again at the power of the Adept, as awesome in its discretion as in its ferocity. After that, my father made no objection to Blue's suit. It was as if he had exchanged me for the precious fowl, and duly the bonds were published, and I married the Blue Adept. I did not really love him, and he was ever kind to me, and made for me the fine domicile now called the Blue Demesne, and encouraged me to develop and practice my healing art on any creatures who stood in need, even trolls and snow demons, and what I was unable to heal, he restored by a spell of his own. Some we healed were human, and some of these took positions at the castle, willingly serving as sentries and as menials, though no contract bound them. But mainly it was the animals who came to us, and no creature ever was turned away, not even those known as monsters, so long as they wreaked no havoc. It was a picture book marriage. She abated her narrative. I thank thee for telling me how it was, Stile said carefully. I have not told thee the half of how it was, she said with surprising vehemence. I loved him not enough. Not enough, and there was a guise upon our union. He knew both these things, yet he treated me ever with consummate respect and kindness. How I wronged him. This was a surprise. Surely thou dost overstate the case. I cannot imagine thee. But confession was upon her. Nasa made a little shake of her horn, advising him to be silent, and Stile obeyed. The guise was inherent in his choice of me to wed. He had asked the oracle for his ideal wife, but had failed to include in that definition the ideal mother of his children. Thus I learned when I queried the oracle about the number and nature of my children to be. None by one, it told me in part, and in time I understood. There would be no child by my marriage to him, no heir to the Blue Demesne. In that way I wronged him, and my love, she shrugged. I was indeed a fool. Still I thought of him as a lad, a grown child, though I knew him for a man, and a creature of incalculable power. Perhaps it was that power that straightened my heart against him. How could I truly love one who could so readily destroy all who stood before him? What would happen if ever he became wroth with me? And he, aware of this doubt, forced me not, and therefore had I my guilt. So it was for years. She broke off, overcome by emotion. Stile remained silent. This was an aspect of her history that instilled misgiving, yet he knew it was best that he know it. Those wasted years, she cried, and now it is too late. They had come to rougher territory, as if the land itself responded to the lady's anguish of conscience. These were the mere foothills to the Purple Mountains, Stile knew, yet the ridges and gullies became steep and the trees grotesquely gnarled. The turf was thick and springy. The steeds were not partial to the footing. Stile found the landscape beautiful, original, and somehow ominous, like the Lady Blue. Can we skirt this region? Stile asked Nasa. The unicorn blew a note of negation. It seemed this was the only feasible route. Stile knew better than to challenge this. The unicorn could have winded a dragon or some other natural hazard, and be threading her way safely past. So they picked their pace carefully through the rugged serrations of the land, making slow progress toward the major range. The lady's horse balked. She frowned and gently urged it forward, but the mare circled instead to the side, and balked again. This is odd, the lady commented, forgetting her recent emotion. What is bothering thee in blue? Then the lady's fair tresses lifted of their own accord, though there was no wind. Nasa made a double musical snort. Magic. Stile brought out his harmonica. Nay, play not, the lady said hastily. She did not want him to show his power in the vicinity of the land of the little folk. But her hair danced about and flung itself across her eyes like a separately living thing, and her horse fidgeted with increasing nervousness. Nasa's horn began to lower to fighting range. Just a melody, Stile told her. Nasa and I will play a little tune, just to calm thy steed, and to summon his magic, just in case. They played an impromptu duet. Nasa's music was lovely, of course, but Stile's carried the magic. It coalesced like a forming storm, charging the immediate atmosphere. And in that charge, dim figures began to appear. Small, slender humanoids, with flowing hair and shining white robes. They had been invisible. Now they were translucent, the color slowly coming as the music thickened the musical ambience. Stile's power was revealing them. One of them was hovering near the lady, playing with her hair. The she, the lady breathed, pronouncing it she. The fairy folk, they were teasing us. Stile squeezed Nasa's sides with his knees questioningly. She perked her ears forward, a signal that there was no immediate danger. Stile continued playing, and the ethereal figures solidified. Oh, she, the lady said, why do you interfere with us? We seek no quarrel with your kind. Then a fairy man responded. We merely played with thee for fun, lady of the human folk, as we do so often with those who are unaware of our nature. Innocent mischief is the joy of our kind. His voice was winningly soft, with the merry tinkle of a mountain streamlet highlighting it. Stile could appreciate how readily such a voice could be mistaken for completely natural effects. Flowing water, blowing breezes, rustling leaves. And thou, a she-maid said to Stile as he played, what call hast thou of elven kind to ride with a mundane woman? Her voice was as soft as the distant cooing of forest doves, seductively sweet, and her face and form were similarly winsome. Stile put aside his harmonica. The she remained tangible. Now that they had been exposed, they had no further need of invisibility. I am a man, he said. A man on a unicorn? She inquired derisively. Nay, thou art more likely a giant kobold, serving in the house of the human lady. Thou canst not fool her long, sirrah. Come, I will offer thee entertainment fit for thy kind. And she did a little skip in air that caused her white skirt to sail up, displaying her immortal legs to advantage. Thou art not my kind, Stile insisted, intrigued. Dost thou jilt me already? She flashed, and evanescent sparks radiated from her hair. I will have thy fanny in a hoist, ingrate. Nasa shifted her horn to bear on the fairy lass, who skipped nimbly aside. These magical creatures might not fear the weapons of human beings, but the unicorn's horn was itself magical, and would take its toll on any creature. Stile lifted his harmonica to his mouth again. Yes, play, the she-lady exclaimed. I will forgive thee thine indiscretion if thou playest while we dance. It was a face-saving maneuver on her part, but Stile decided to go along. He did not want to have to use overt magic here. He played and Nasa accompanied him, and the music was marvelously light and pretty. Stile had been a fair musician before he came to Phaze, but he had improved substantially since. The she flocked in and formed their formation in midair. They danced, wheeling in pairs, singing and clapping their little hands. The male stood about 4.5 feet tall, with calloused hands and curly, short beards. The females were closer to 4 feet, and all were delicate of limb and torso. They whirled and pranced, the girls flinging their skirts out with delightful abandon, the men doing elaborate dance steps. It was beautiful and looked like an extraordinary amount of fun. After a time, the she damsel floated back down to Stile. She perched on Nasa's horn, somewhat to the unicorn's annoyance. She was breathing briskly, her full bodice flexing rhythmically. "Give over, giant elf. Thou art forgiven," she exclaimed. "Now come dance with me before sunset, while thy steed plays her horn." And she reached out a hand to him, the tiny fingers beckoning. Stile glanced at the Lady Blue, who nodded affirmatively. Nasa shrugged. Both evidently felt it was better to go along with the fairy folk than to oppose them. They were getting along well at the moment. Better not to disrupt the mood, for such creatures could be unpleasant when angered, and their tempers were volatile. Stile had seen that in the mercurial reactions of this little lady, yet he demurred, more diplomatically this time. "Elven lass, I cannot dance in air without magic." And he was not about to reveal his true nature now. Already he understood that adepts were held in as poor regard by the little folk as by ordinary human people. "Then shall I join thee below?" she said, descending lightly to the turf. Then abruptly shy, "I am Thistlepuff." Stile dismounted. "I am Stile." He stood almost a foot taller than she, and really did feel like a giant now. Was this the way Hulk saw the world? "The bridge between pastures?" Thistlepuff exclaimed, correctly interpreting his name. Then she did a pirouette, again causing her skirt to rise and expose her fine and slender legs. This was a characteristic gesture with her. In the frame of Proton, where all serfs were naked, no such effect was possible, and Stile found it almost embarrassingly appealing. The brief glimpse seemed better than the constant view, because of the surprise and mystery. Clothing, he realized, was also magic. Stile had played the game in Proton for most of his life. Part of the game was the column of the arts, and part of the naked arts was dance. He was an athlete and a gymnast, and he had a good memory and sense of pace. Hence, Stile could dance as well as any man, and a good deal better than most. He had watched and analyzed the patterns of the fairy dance, and now understood it well enough. If this sprite thought to make a fool of him for the entertainment of her peers, she would be disappointed. He went into a whirl of his own, matching Thistlepuff's effort. There was a faint "ooh" of surprise, and the other fairy folk gathered about to watch. Yes, they had thought to have sport with him. The lass stepped blithely into his arms, and he swung her in she fashion. Her head topped at the level of his shoulder, and she was light as a puff of smoke, but she was also lithe and sweet to hold. She spun out and kicked one leg high in the manner of a ballerina. Oh, didn't she love to show those legs! Well, he steadied her by the other hand. Then she spun back into his embrace, making a little leap so that her face met his in a fleeting kiss that struck and dissipated like a breath of cool fog. They moved into a small promenade, and he tossed her into the air for a graceful flip, and caught her neatly at the waist. Light as she was, it was easy to do the motions, and he enjoyed it. He felt more and more like the giant he had never been, and privately he reveled in it. When the demonstration was through, the she spectators applauded gleefully. "Thou hast danced before," Thistlepuff exclaimed, her bosom heaving with even more abandon. "Yet thou dost claim to be human." "Human beings can dance," Stile said. the lady I serve could do as well. He hoped that was the case. It occurred to him he spoke that though he had never seen the Lady Blue ride marvelously, though he had seen the Lady Blue ride marvelously well, he had never seen her dance. Yet of course she could do it. Nasa blew a note of caution, but it was too late. Stile, in his inexperience with the fairy folk, had made another blunder. Thistlepuff was frowning mischievously at the Lady Blue.
So thou sayest,
the she inquired, as sharply as the sound of the wood of a tree limb snapping under too great a burden of snow.
Thou art of the elfin kind, surely, but she is as surely mundane. We shall see how well she can dance.
And the she recentered their ring on the lady. He had gotten her into this. He would have to get her out. Stile crossed to the lady as she dismounted. He could not even apologize. That would betray the situation to the fairy folk. He had to bluff it through, and he hoped that she could and would go along. The Lady Blue smiled enigmatically and took his proffered hand. Good. At least she accepted him as a partner. It would have been disaster with a mischievous 4.5-foot tall she-male for a dancing partner. At least Stile would keep his feet mainly on the ground. It would have to be impromptu freeform, for they had had no rehearsal. Stile hoped the lady had analyzed the dancing patterns as he had, but he let her lead so that she could show him what she wanted. Suddenly, they were in it. The lady was taller than he and as heavy, but also as lithe and light on her feet as a woman could be. When he swung her, she was solid, not at all like Thistlepuff, yet she moved precisely. He did not try to toss her in the air, but she was so well balanced he could hold her up readily and whirl her freely. When he moved, she matched him. When he stepped, she stepped. When he leaped, she was with him. In fact, she was the best dancer he had encountered. It was a fragment of heaven, being with her like this. For the moment he could almost believe she was his. When they danced apart, she was a marvel of motion and symmetry. When they danced together, she was absolute delight. Now he wished this dance could go on forever, keeping his dream alive. But then Nasa brought her harmonica melody to a close, and the dance ended. The she applauded.
Aye, she can dance,
Thistlepuff agreed ruefully.
Mayhap she has some inkling of fairy blood in her ancestry after all. Thou hast shamed us, and we must make amend. Come to our village this night.
We dare not decline their hospitality, the Lady Blue murmured in his ear. She was glowing with her effort of the dance, and he wished he could embrace her and kiss her. But this was one blunder he knew better than to make. Now the steep bank of a ridge opened in a door. There was light inside, and warmth. The passage into the hill was broad enough for the steeds, and these were, of course, welcome. They walked into the fairy village. Inside, it was amazingly large. This was technically a cave, but it seemed more like a clearing in a deep wood at night, the walls invisible in their blackness. A cheery fire blazed in the center. Already a feast was being laid out. A keg of liquor, many delicious-smelling breadstuffs, fresh vegetables, pots of roasted potatoes, and buckets of milk and honey and dew. For the animals, there was copious grain and fragrant hay and a sparkling stream. Then Stile remembered something from his childhood readings. If a human being partakes of fairy food, is he not doomed to live among them forever? We have business elsewhere. Thistlepuff laughed with the sound of rain spattering into a quiet pond.
Thou really art not of our kind, then. How canst thou believe that myth? Thou hast it backwards. If ever one of the she forsakes his own and consumes mundane food, he is doomed to become mortal. That is the true tragedy.
Stile looked at Nasa, embarrassed. She blew a positive note. No danger here. Thistlepuff had spoken the truth. or close enough to it to eliminate his concern. So he had blundered again, but not seriously. The Shi were amused. Now they ate, and it was an excellent repast. Afterwards, pleasantly sated, they availed themselves of the fairy sanitary facilities, which were concealed in a thick bed of toadstools, then accepted invisible hammocks in lieu of beds. Stile was so comfortable that he fell almost instantly to sleep, and remained in blissful repose until a beam of sunlight struck his face in the morning. Startled, he looked about. He was lying in a bed of fern in a niche in the gully. No cave, no invisible hammock, no fairy village. The Lady Blue was up before him. She had already fetched fruit from some neighboring tree. Nasa and Hinblue were grazing. Stile was abashed. Last night, what I remember, the She. Did I dream? The Lady Blue presented him with a pomegranate. Of dancing with the fairy folk, sharing their food, consuming too much of their nefarious dew, so thou didst sleep like a rock, forever in their invisible hammock? It must have been a dream, for I remember it not. There was a musical, mirthful snort from Nasa. Even so, Stile agreed, concentrating on the fruit. Was his face as red as its juice? The She had had some sport with him after all, but how glad he was to note that the lady's heavy mood had lifted. Yet dost thou dance divinely in thy dreams? The lady was for a moment pensive, then reverted briskly to business. If thou dost not get thy lazy bones aloft, never shall we locate the Platinum Elves in time for thee to go divert thyself at thy next other frame game with thy mechanical paramour. Barbed wit there. The proton tourney was no fun diversion, but a matter of life or non-life on that planet. Stile rose with alacrity. One more day, one more night. That's all the time I have until I have to report for round 2 of the tourney. Soon they were on their way again. It had been a good night. Human and equine beings had extra vigor. Nasa and Hinblue stepped out briskly, hurdling the ridges and gullies and hummocks. Nasa, conscious of the equine limitations of the natural horse, did not push the pace too fast, but miles were traversed swiftly. The Lady Blue, of course, rode expertly. Stile might be the best rider in Phaze, but she was the second best. After an hour, Stile became aware of something fleeting. He murmured. His bodily reaction was already turning around. Is aught amiss? The Lady Blue inquired, elevating an eyebrow prettily. The curtain, Stile said. We just passed it. I need to note where it is, as a matter of future reference. There may be good places to cross it to Proton, if only I can locate them. There are times when I wish I could cross that curtain, she'd said wistfully, but hardly can I even perceive it. Ah, here it is, Stile said, proceeding northeast-southwest, angling up from the Purple Mountains. Of course, it may curve about in between reference points, but... The lady waved a hand. Cross it, my lord, and see where it leads. Only forget not to return, lest I abscond with thy steed. Stile laughed, then spelled himself through. The other side was hot and bleak. The ubiquitous cloud of pollution was thinner here, but the haze still shrouded a distant force field dome. This was not a good place to cross. He needed a section within a dome, or very close to one. Ah, well, it had been worth checking. He released his held breath and willed himself back into Phaze as he stepped back across the faint scintillation. It was a great relief to see the lush greenery form around him. What a mess the citizens had made of the surface of their planet in the name of progress. I'm satisfied. Let's go. Yet, if I could cross, it would mean there would be no one for Hulk, the lady concluded. By mid-morning they had reached the fringe of the Platinum Domain. Elven warning markers so informed them. Now Stile uncorked the Yellow Adept's gift potion and applied it liberally to his face and hands. He offered some to the lady, but she demurred. She did not care to smell like an elf. Since she was obviously no threat to anyone, Stile trusted it would be all right. The Platinum Domain were in the Purple Mountains proper. The access pass was marked by a neat wooden sign, PT-78. Stile smiled, recognizing the scientific symbol and atomic number of platinum. Surely some crossover from the frame of Proton here. Evidently, these little people had a sense of unity or of humor. They rode up the narrow trail. The mountain slopes rose up steeply on either side, becoming almost vertical. It would be very easy for someone to roll boulders down. The stones would flatten anyone misfortunate enough to be in their way, except an ogre or an adept. Stile kept his hand on his harmonica and his mind on a boulder repulsion spell he had devised. He did not want to use magic here, but he wanted even less to suffer death by stoning. Then they encountered a hanging bridge. It crossed a deep, dark chasm too wide for Nasa to leap, but the bridge was too narrow and fragile to support equine weight. Nasa could change form and cross, but that would not help Hinblue. Stile considered casting a spell to transport the horse across, but vetoed it himself. The Platinum Elves could be watching. So they would have to cross the hard way, by navigating the chasm manually. Perhaps this was a deliberate hurdle to test the nature of intruders, separating the natural from the supernatural. Or more likely, the elven folk did not want mounted visitors charging into their domain. There was a precarious path down into the chasm, and another rising on the far side. Probably the two connected below. Stile and the lady started down, riding, because the steed did not trust the people's ability to navigate such a pass safely alone, but Stile kept his hand on the harmonica. Touch of that musical instrument reminded him he was coming here for a flute. Yet how could a musical instrument avail him? What he really needed was a weapon. Well, he should soon be finding out. Fortunately, the path did not descend far. It reached a broad ledge that cut into the chasm, reducing it to a width that could be conveniently hurdled by the steeds. The path continued on down into the chasm, but they did not follow it. They jumped across the ugly crack and started up the other side. Stile was aware of a hot draft that came up erratically from the depths, smelling of sulfur. He did not like it. They emerged at the top of the chasm and continued on up the path. Now they were higher in the mountain range, nearing the top, and they rounded the crest, and the landscape leveled, and lo, it was only a larger foothill. Ahead, the real mountains loomed, sloping up into the clouds. They were tall enough to maintain snow, but it was purple snow. On this brief, level spot was a mound, overgrown by turf and vines. The path led right to it. In fact, there was a stone entranceway. "Methinks we have arrived," Stile murmured, dismounting. "Methinks thou shalt not swiftly depart," a voice said behind him. Stile turned to find a small man in the path behind. He stood about 4 inches shorter than Stile, but was broader in proportion. His skin was an almost translucent blue, and his clothing was steel gray. "Thou must be of the elven folk," Stile said. "I come to beg a favor of the workers of platinum." "We do work platinum," the elf agreed, "but we do no favors for outsiders. Thou art now our prisoner, and thy human companion." He gestured with his shining sword. "Now proceed into the mound, the two of you. Thine animals will join our herds outside." Nasa turned on the arrogant elf, but Stile laid a cautioning hand on her back. "We came to petition. We must yield to them," he murmured. "If they treat us ill, thou canst then act as thou seest fit. An thou dost find me fettered, free me to play my music." Nasa made an almost imperceptible nod with her horn. Once Stile had access to his music, he could bring his powers of magic into play, and would then be able to handle himself. So the risk was less than it seemed. He and the lady suffered themselves to be herded into the mound. Inside, it was gloomy, with only wan lighting filtering in through refractive vents. Several other armed elves were there, garbed like the first. Their leader stepped up and appraised Stile and the lady as if they were newly purchased animals. He sniffed as he approached Stile. "This one be elven," he pronounced, "but the woman is human. Him we shall spare to labor at our forges. Her we will use as tribute to the beast." "Is this the way thy kind welcomes those who come peaceably to deal with thee?" Stile asked. There was no way he would permit the Lady Blue to be abused. "Silence, captive!" the elf cried, striking at Stile's face with a backhand swing of his arm. The blow, of course, never landed. Stile ducked away from it and caught the elf's arm in a punishing submission hold. "I cannot imagine the elders of thy kind being thus inhospitable," he said mildly. "I suggest that thou dost summon them now." "No need," a new voice said. It was a frail, long-bearded old elf, whose face and hands were black and wrinkled. "Gods be gone. I will deal with this matter myself." Stile let go his captive, and the young elves faded into the crevices and crannies of the chamber. The old sir faced Stile. "I am Piers Forge, chief of the tribe of the Platinum Mound folk of the Dark Elves. I apologize for thy inhospitality shown thee by our impetuous youth. It is thy size they resent, for they take thee to be a giant of our kind." "A giant?" Stile exclaimed, amused. "I'm 4 feet 11 inches tall." "And I am 4 feet 5 inches tall," Pireford said. "It is the odor of thy potion that deceives us, as well as thy size. To what do we owe this visit by the Lady and Blue Adept?" Stile smiled ruefully. "I had not thought to be so obvious." "Thou art not. I was delayed researching my references for thy description. I pored all through the elven species in vain. It was the unicorn that at last betrayed thee, though we thought Blue recently deceased." "Nasa would never." The old elf held up a withered hand. "I queried the corn not, but no man save one rides the unicorn, or travels with the fairest of human ladies. That be the impostor Blue Adept, who I think will not be considered impostor long." Stile relaxed. "Oh, of course. Those must be comprehensive references thou hast." "Indeed, yet they are oft tantalizingly incomplete. Be it true that thou didst come recently on the scene in the guise of thy murdered self, and when the unicorns and werewolves challenged thee, performed 2 acts of magic, the first of which was inconsequential, and the second enchantment like none known before, that established thee as the most powerful magician of the frame despite being a novice." "It may be true," Stile agreed, taken aback. He had rather underestimated his magical strength on that occasion. Probably it had been the strength of his feeling that had done it, rather than any special aptness at magic. Then, perceiving that the elder was genuinely curious, he amplified. "I am of the proton frame, come to take up the mantle of my Phaze self and set to right the wrong of his murder. When the unicorn herd stallion challenged me to show my magic, I made a spell to wall him in. When my unicorn steed yielded her ambition on my behalf, I made an oath of friendship to her. It had a broader compass than I expected." The elder nodded. "Ah, and the corns and wolves have not warred since. Thou art indeed adept, yet not omnipotent." "Now must I need meet the herd stallion again at the Unolympics, and I am not a match for without magic. The oracle sent me to borrow the platinum flute."
Ah, now it comes clear. That would, of course, avail thee.
Yet the elf seemed cold. That I am glad to hear, Stile said. I have heard it said that music has charm to soothe the savage beast, and whether it soothed the breast of a beast. The elder frowned.
Yet it is forbidden for us to yield this instrument, forbidden to lend it depth. Knowest thou not its power?
Stile shook his head. I know only what the oracle advised.
No need for mystery. The wielder of the flute is immune from the negation of magic. There are other qualities about it, but that is the primary one.
Stile thought about that. For an ordinary person, the flute would provide little advantage. But for a magic creature, such as a werewolf, it would protect his ability to shape change, and that could on occasion be a matter of life and death. For an adept, with the flute in his position, Stile could draw on his full powers of magic, even within the magic negating circle of unicorns. The herd stallion would not be able to stand against him. The oracle had spoken truly. This was the instrument he needed. But at the same time, he could understand why the mound folk did not want him to have it. The existence of various magic nullifiers prevented the adepts from being overwhelmingly powerful. If an adept obtained possession of the platinum flute, there would be no effective limit to his will. I appreciate thy concern, Stile said. In fact, I agree with it. The likes of me should not possess the likes of this. The Lady Blue's head turned toward him questioningly. Thou dost not abuse thy power. How could the mound folk be assured of that? Stile asked her. There is corruption in power, and if the flute were taken from me by another adept, what then would be the limit?
It is good that thou dost understand, the elder said. The oracle oft does give unuseful advice, accurate though it may be. We elves have great pride in our artifacts, and trade them freely for things of equal value. But the flute is special. It required many years' labor by our finest artisans, and is our most precious and potent device. It has no equal value. No other tribe has its match, not the goldsmiths, or the silversmiths, or the ironsmiths, or the woodsmiths, or bonesmiths. We alone work the Lord of Metals. We alone control the platinum mine and have the craftsmen and magic to shape it into usable form. Thou art not asking for a trifle, adept.
Yes, Stile agreed. Yet is the oracle wont to provide advice that can in no wise be implemented?
Never. I termed it unuseful, in the sense that surely there is some simpler way to achieve thy mission with the herd stallion than this. Misinterpretations may abate the worth of an oracle's message, but always the essence is there and true. There must be some pattern to this. Therefore must we deal with thee, can we but find the way. Thou knowest that even for the briefest loan we must extract a price.
I am prepared to offer fair exchange, though I know that.
There is little we need from thy kind.
Resources, shouldst thou choose to tolerate the practice of magic in thy demesne, is there anything that requires the talent of an adept? Pyreforge considered gravely.
There be only two things. The lesser is not a task any man can perform, and the greater is unknown even to us. We know only that it must be performed by the finest mortal musician of Phaze.
I did not claim to be the finest musician, but I am skilled, Stile. The wizened elf raised a shriveled eyebrow.
Skilled enough to play the flute?
I am conversant with the flute as an instrument. I should be able to play the platinum flute unless there be a guise against it. The elder considered again. He was obviously ill at ease.
It is written that he who plays the flute well enough to make our mountains tremble will be the foreordained saviour of Phaze. Dost thou think thou art that one?
Stile spread his hands. I doubt it. I was not even aware that Phaze was in jeopardy.
The oracle surely knows, however, if the time of decision draws nigh.
Pireford shook his head dolefully.
I think we must try thee on the flute, though it grieves me with spreading misgiving.
He glanced at a crevice where a guard lurked.
How be the light outside?
The guard hurried outside. In a moment, overcast, shrouded by fog. It will not lift this hour.
Then may we gather outside. Summon the tribe this instant.
The guard disappeared again.
This be no casual matter, Adept. The flute extends its force regardless, protecting the magic of the holder. And thou shouldst betray us. We must die to a man to recover it, killing thee if we can. Thou canst be trusted, and on that needs must I gamble, and I be in error.
Stile did not like this either, but he was not sure how to alleviate the elf's concerns.
Let thy warriors fix their threats on me, the Lady Blue said. My lord will not betray thee.
Pireford shook his head.
This be not our way, lady, despite the ignorance of our commoners, and it would not avail against the typical adept, who values nothing more than his power.
Well, I know the justice of thy concern, yet would I stake my life upon my lord's integrity. The elder smiled.
No need, lady. Already have I staked mine. No lesser a piece in these demean, when an adept manifests here. I do this only for that the oracle has cast its impart on us, and suggests the ponderosity of the situation. Fate draws the string on every creature, inquiring not what any person's preference might be.
He returned his attention to Stile.
The flute's full power is available only to the one who can master it completely, the one for whom it is destined. We made it, but cannot use it. Only the foreordained can exploit it ultimately. When he comes, the end of the present order will be near. This is why we cannot give up the flute to any lesser person.
I seek only to borrow it, Stile reminded him. This did not look promising. If he were not the foreordained, they would not let him borrow the flute. If he were, there was a great deal more riding on this than his encounter with the herd stallion. They walked outside. The clouds shrouding all the mountains above their level, leaving only a low-ceilinged layer of visibility, like a huge room. The elves of the tribe had gathered on the knoll, completely surrounding the mound, young and old, women and children too. Most were slender and handsome. Among them, the women were phenomenally lovely, but a few were darkened and wrinkled like the elder. Stile was the cynosure of all their eyes. He saw them measuring him, discomforted by his large stature. He did indeed feel like a giant, and no longer experienced any exhilaration in the sensation. All his life he had privately longed for more height. Now he understood that such a thing would not be an unmixed blessing, and perhaps no blessing at all. It was in being different, in whatever manner.
We cannot bear the direct light of the sun, being dark elves, the elder said. Should a sunbeam strike us, we turn instantly to stone. That is why the fog is so important, and why we reside in these oft-shrouded mountains, and seldom go abroad from by day. Yet, like all our kind, we like to dance, And at night when it is safe and the moons be bright, we come out. I was in my youth careless, and a ray pierced a thin cloud and transfixed me ere I could seek cover. I turned not to stone, but became as I am now. It was the wan sun, not mine age, that scorched me.
I might heal thee of that, Stile said, if thou wishes. A spell of healing.
What I might wish is of no account. The consequences of my folly, as must we all.
Now an elf brought, with an air of ceremony, a somber wooden case.
But for the hour only,
the elder told Stile.
Ascertain for thyself and for us thy relation to it. The truth be greater than the will of any of us. It must be known.
Stile took the precious case. Inside, in cushioned splendor, lay the several pieces of gleaming metal tubing. Platinum, yes, a fortune in precious metal, exclusive of its worth as a music instrument, which had to be considerable, its value as a magic talisman. He lifted out the pieces carefully and assembled it, conscious of its perfect heft and workmanship. The king of flutes, surely. Meanwhile, the moundfolk watched in sullen silence, and the elder talked, unable to contain his pride in the instrument.
Our mine be not pure platinum. There is an admixture of gold and indium that provides character and hardness. We make many tools and weapons and utensils, though few of these are imbued with magic. There is also a Phaze flute too.
Phazite? Stile inquired. I'm not familiar with that metal.
Not metal precisely, but mineral. Thou mayest know it as protonite.
Protonite? Stile exclaimed. The energy mineral? I thought that existed only in proton frame.
It exists here, but in another aspect, as do all things. Wert thou not aware that phasite be the fundamental repository of magic here? In proton frame, it yields physical energy in abundance. In phase frame, it yields magic. Every act of magic exhausts some of that power, but the stores of it are so great and full, a depth so few that it will endure yet for millennia.
But in proton they are mining it, exporting it at a horrendous rate.
They are foolish there. They will exhaust in decades what would otherwise have served them 100 times as long. It should be conserved for this world.
So Phaze was likely to endure a good deal longer than proton, Stile realized. That made Phaze an even better place to be. But why, then, was there this premonition of the foreordained, and of the end of Phaze? Stile could appreciate why Pyreforge was disturbed. There were indeed hints of something seriously amiss. What would happen when Proton ran out of protonite? Would citizens start crossing the curtain to raid the supplies? If so, terrible trouble was ahead, for citizens would let nothing inhibit them from gratification of their desires. Only the abolition of the curtain would prevent them from ravishing Phaze as they had ravished Proton. Yet how could a natural yet intangible artifact like the curtain be removed? Now the flute was assembled and complete. It was the most beautiful instrument Stile had ever seen. He lifted it slowly to his mouth. "May I?" he asked.
"Do the best thou canst with it," the elf said tightly. "Never have we heard its sound. We cannot play it. Only a mortal can do that."
Stile applied his lips, set his fingers, and blew experimentally. A pure, liquid, ineffably sweet. It sounded across the landscape, transfixing all the spectators. Elder and alike stood and bent her ears forward. The Lady Blue seemed transcendently fair, as if a sanguine breeze caressed her. There was a special flute quality to the note, of course, but more than that, for this was no ordinary flute. The note was ecstatic in its force and clarity and color, the quintessence of sound. Then Stile moved into an impromptu melody. The instrument responded like a living extension of himself, seeming to possess nerves of its own. It was impossible to miskey such a flute. It was too perfect. And it came to him, in a minor revelation, that this must be the way it was to be a unicorn, with a living, musical horn. No wonder those creatures played so readily and well. Now the mound folk danced, their sullenness vanished, compelled away by the music, and their feet became light. They formed their ranks on the ground, not in the air, and kept their motions on a single plane. But they were abandoned in their sheer joy of motion. The elves scintillated as they turned, and their damsels glowed. They spun into convoluted patterns that nevertheless possessed the beauty of organization. They flung out and in. They kicked their feet in unison. The elves swung the maids, and the maids swung the elves. They threaded their way through each other in a tapestry of ever-increasing intricacy. There were no tosses or acrobatic swings, merely synchronized patterns that coalesced into an artistic whole. Over and through it all passed the grandeur of the music of the flute, fashioning from disparate elements an almost divine unity. It was not Stile's skill so much as the talent bequeathed by the perfect instrument. He could not shame it by delivering less than his ultimate. Stile saw that the fog was lifting and thinning, as if dissipated by the music. The clouds roiled and struggled to free themselves of their confinement. He brought the recital to a close, and the dancing came to a neat halt as if it had been planned exactly this way. Again the mound folk stood still, but now they were smiling. Even the guards who had greeted Stile so inhospitably had relaxed their resentment.
"That was the loveliest music I ever did hear,"
the elder said.
"It made our finest dance. Thou hast rare talent, yet did the mountain not shake?"
"It did not shake," Stile agreed, relieved.
"Thou art not the foredoomed."
"Never did I claim to be."
"Still, thou canst play marvellously well. If the oracle decrees that the flute be loaned to thee, it may be that we are constrained to oblige."
"This I would appreciate," Stile said, taking apart the instrument and returning it carefully to its case. "If thou dost trust me with it." But now the circled mound folk frowned and muttered. The roil of the clouds had stilled when the music stopped, but the disturbance seemed to have passed into the elves.
"Nay, my people will not so lightly tolerate that. Perhaps if we borrowed thy service in exchange."
The muttering subsided. "I'm willing to do what service I may," Stile said, "but I cannot remain here long. I have commitments elsewhere. I will need the flute for a number of days, until the Unolympics." The muttering began again.
"Desist this noise,"
the elder cried at the elves, annoyed.
"We shall fashion a fair bargain, or not part with the flute."
He accepted the flute case from Stile. In this judgment, at least, he had not been mistaken. Stile had neither abused the flute, nor sought to retain it without permission.
"Now get under cover before the cloud breaks."
There was little danger of that now, but the mound folks hurried anyway, Stile and the lady returning inside the nearest mound with the elder, while Nasa and Hinblue returned to their grazing.
"It could be said,"
Pireford said after reflection,
"that thou dost borrow the flute only to bring it to one for whom it is intended, the foreordained."
"But I do not know the foreordained."
"Then shalt thou quest for him."
Stile understood the nature of the offer. Such a quest could take as long as he needed for the flute, yet it would have to be a true mission. How could I know him?
"He would play the flute better than thee."
"There may be many who can do that."
"I think not, but thou wouldst send him to us, as we cannot fare forth to seek him. and we would know by the tenor of the mountain his identity. If he played well but was not the foreordained, we at least would have the flute back.
This seems less than certain. I think, at least for the acquiescence of thy people, I need to earn this borrowing. Thou didst mention 2 tasks, the lesser of which no man might perform. Yet I am adept.
Canst thou wield a broadsword?
I can, Stile replied, surprised.
This task bears the threat of ugly death to any but the most skilled and persistent swordsman.
I have faced such threats before. I would feel more secure from them with the flute in my hands and a broadsword ready.
Assuredly. Then listen, adept. There is beneath our mound, demesne, and below our platinum mine, deep in a cave hewn out of the phasite bedrock, one of the worms of the fundament, ancient and strong and savage and fiery.
A dragon! Stile exclaimed.
Even so, but not one of the ordinary reptiles of the southern marches beyond these mountains. This monster has slowly tunneled through the mountain range during all the time we have mined here. Now we have come within awareness of each other. The worm be centuries old, and its teeth are worn, and its heat diminished, so that it can no longer consume rock as readily as in bygone centuries. Yet it is beyond our means to thwart. It requires from us tribute.
Human sacrifice, Stile exclaimed, remembering the threat the elves had made concerning the Lady Blue.
Even so, we like this not, yet if we fail to deliver on schedule, the worm will exert itself and undermine our foundations and melt our platinum ore, and we shall be finished as smiths. We are smithy elves, highly specialized. It took us a long time to work up to platinum and become proficient with it. We cannot go back to mere gold, even if other tribes had not already filled in. We must maintain our present level or become as nothing. My people would sooner go out in sunlight.
So thou dost need that dragon eliminated, Stile concluded.
For that, I believe my people would abate their disquietus murmurings about the loan of the flute.
Even so, Stile said warily, this is a large dragon?
Enormous.
Breathes fire?
20-foot jets from each nostril.
Armored?
Stainless steel overlapping scales, 5-inch claws, 6-inch teeth, lightning bolts from eyes.
Temperament?
Aggressive.
Resistive to magic?
Extremely. The worm beds in phasite, so has developed a considerable immunity.
I wonder what it was like in its prime, Stile mused.
No matter. In its prime, it needed not the tribute of our kind.
But if the platinum flute were employed,
the magic of the flute be stronger than the anti-magic of the worm.
Then it is possible that an adept carrying the flute could dispatch the creature.
Possible, but hardly probable. The worm cannot be abolished by magic alone.
Well, I'd be willing to make the attempt.
Nay, the Lady Blue cried. Few dragons hast thou encountered. Thou knowest naught their nature, except not this perilous mission.
I would not borrow a thing of value without giving service in return, Stile said. But if I could borrow the flute to brace the worm, thereafter I would feel justified in borrowing it for one task of mine own. There must be other uses I could make of it besides matching a unicorn stallion, until I locate the one for whom the flute be intended.
Thou meanest to brace the worm?
The elder asked. At least to make the attempt. If I fail to dispatch it, I will return the flute immediately to thee, if I remain able to do so.
Nay, the lady cried again, this is too high a price to ask, for the mere postponement of the breeding of one mare. She is mine oath friend, yet— For that trifle thou dost this? The elder demanded, abruptly suspicious. Thou dost risk thy life against the worm, and they pride against the stallion, for
She is a very special mare. Also, mine oath friend, Stile said stiffly, not wanting to admit that things had pyramided somewhat.
I fear my people will not support this, the elder said. They will fear thou wouldst borrow the flute merely to abscond with it, facing no worm. Who would stop thee, armed with it?
Both Stile and the lady reacted with anger. My Lord Blue does not cheat, she flared. I thought we had already made proof of this. Again will I stand hostage to that. Nay, Stile said, touched by her loyalty, though he knew it was the honor of the Blue Demesne she was protecting rather than himself. Thou wert no hostage. The elder's canny gaze passed from one to another.
Yet perhaps this would do this time. Let the lady be my guest here for a few hours. Do we care if others assume she be security for this loan of the flute? Methinks no man would leave his love to be sacrificed to a dragon. If the worm be slain, thy mettle is proved, and the loan is good.
The lady is not my... Stile started, then reconsidered. It was a matter he preferred not to discuss here. Also, he would be operating on an extremely tenuous footing if he denied his love for her. He would not permit her to be fed to the dragon, whatever her feeling for him.
Others be not aware of that,
the elder said, delicately skirting the issue.
Few know that the Lord of the Blue Demesne has changed. Let her remain with me, and none of my people will hold thy motive in suspicion. She will not be ill-treated.
He glanced at the lady.
Dost thou perchance play chess?
Perchance, she agreed, smiling. Stile realized that the elder had proffered a viable compromise. It was a way to suppress the objections of the moundfolk without really threatening the lady. Certainly Stile was not about to take her with him to meet the dragon. Do thou keep the harmonica during mine absence, Stile said to the lady, handing her the instrument. This time I must use the flute. I like this note, she said grimly, but she took the harmonica. If Stile did not return, she would at least retain this memento of her husband. Fireforge, meanwhile, was setting up the chessmen. Stile carried the flute with him into the depth of the crevice. Now he knew the origin of the hot wind and demonic odor from this crevasse. The worm lurked below. He had never fought a real dragon before, as the lady had mentioned, and was not entirely sanguine about this one. The closest approach to a dragon he had made was the one in the Black Demesne, actually formed from a line, and when balked it had unraveled literally into its component string. The worm surely would not do that. Adept quality magic should prevail, but still, something went wrong. Well, he should have the advantage of surprise. The worm would assume Stile was another item of tribute, a victim to be consumed. He should be able to get quite close before the monster realized what it was up against. That would give him time to survey the situation. Fireforge had assured him that the flute would facilitate his magic, yet he had also said that the magic alone would not suffice. That suggested the flute was not quite as powerful a charm as the moundfolk wished to believe. Now they were well below the ledge they had hurdled before. Nasa picked her way carefully as the path narrowed, and Stile kept the flute assembled and handy. For him it would serve double duty, both to protect his ability to do magic, and to summon the magic itself, since he needed music for his spells. He would have been in trouble if he had needed to play two different instruments simultaneously for those purposes. He was rehearsing those spells in his mind now, one to abate fire, another to shield him from biting, another to make him invisible. But mainly he needed one to eradicate the worm, one way or another. Could the creature be banished to hell? Here in this magic frame, there really was a hell. He had accidentally sent Nasa there once. That had led to a lot of trouble, which meant that the option was out. Now, Nasa would not go for it. He was extremely wary of antagonizing his unicorn friend. Unicorns were devastatingly stubborn once they made an issue of something. Not hell, then. How about a size change? convert the giant worm into a midget worm, harmless. Maybe in 3 more centuries it would grow back into a giant, but by then it should be far away, if some hungry bird hadn't snapped it up in the interim. What would be a suitable spell? Monstrous worm, be small as a germ. Hardly great art, he lamented as usual, but for the purpose of magic it only needed to rhyme and have appropriate meter. What kind of magic would be wrought by superior verse? Some day he would have to experiment with genuine poetry instead of doggerel and see what happened. Now the path leveled out. A large round tunnel took off to the side, the bore of the worm. A hot drift of air came from it. The worm could not be far distant. Stile hesitated. He leaned down to whisper into Nesa's left ear, which rotated obligingly to receive his words. If we march blithely into the worm's lair, methinks we'll be slightly cooked, he said. Yet if we do not, the monster may become suspicious. I would like to lure it out to a location convenient for me, so that at least I can survey it before emerging to engage it. Yet how can I bring it to me without engaging it? Nesa blew a short, positive note. Realizing she had a notion, Stile dismounted. She shimmered into girl form, a petite, lovely, naked, semi-elven lass. Tribute, she murmured, making a gesture of innocence and helplessness. Stile was delighted and appalled. Thou wert the perfect lure, he said. Thou fittest the part precisely. But I dare not risk thy getting caught by the monster. She shimmered again and became a firefly. The insect circled him once, then converted back to girl form. That's so, Stile agreed. I keep forgetting thy third form. Thou canst escape, if thou wert not burned. Fireproof, she said. Thy firefly form is fireproof? Wonderful! Nesa was a treasure of ever-new facets. Stile reflected for a moment, then plotted their course. I prefer to have some space to battle the worm, even though I expect to banish it with a spell. One must always be prepared for the unexpected. So do thou lure it out to the crevice, then get thee swiftly to safety. If I destroy it not, and suffer death, do thou fly up to Elder Pyreforge and the lady, and tell them I have failed. I will hurl the flute out to the crevasse if I can, that it not be lost. This sounded bold and brave, but Stile felt somewhat weak in the knees. He had not had much experience in this sort of thing. He really did not expect to be in serious danger of demise, otherwise he would have been terrified. He was just covering the extreme eventuality. Nesa nodded, then walked to the center of the tunnel. Stile sang a spell to make himself invisible. This was external magic only. He remained just as solid as always, despite the change in appearance. He was getting accustomed to the limits of his power. When he lifted himself by magic, he was changing his locale, not his body. He could not heal his own injured knees. He could not duplicate Nesa's shape-changing or genuine insect-flying ability, though he could create the illusion of change in himself, and could fly artificially by magic means. There were some fine distinctions, but overall he was perhaps more vulnerable than Nesa, though he was also more powerful. When she saw he was unseeable, Nesa went into her act. Oh, she cried, I'm so afraid. The horrible dragon is going to eat me. She was really working at it, since she didn't like to talk. Stile felt a warm glow of appreciation. Once Nesa had given him her loyalty, she had been the truest of companions. Soon there was a rumbling deep in the tunnel. A hotter, ranker wash of air passed, as if some enormous engine had started up. Stile's imperfect confidence suffered attrition. There were, after all, so many things that might go wrong. Nesa continued lamenting. The rumble increased. The worm must be afraid that the prey would flee if not quickly nabbed. A reasonable assumption. That was one important thing Stile wanted to know about it. How alert it was. How fast it moved. A big ponderous creature would be easier to handle than... All too soon the worm arrived. It was indeed a dragon. It had a long, narrow head with a conical snout, narrowing in ring-like stages. The derivation of this monster from a literal worm was evident. Of course, there were many kinds of worms. Stile tended to think of earthworms because many citizens employed them in their elegant gardens. But he knew there were other types, some of them vicious. This dragon was a vicious worm grown monstrous. Nasa screamed realistically and skipped nimbly to the mouth of the passage. The worm exhaled a puff of smog and slid forward. Its legs were puny compared to its bulk, not really used for its forward motion, but it did indeed have horrendous claws, and seemed to be fully adequate to the task of gutting a human being efficiently. Its metallic scales did not gleam. They were drab and dirty, more like mud-caked treads of a caterpillar tractor. Stile did not doubt they were invulnerable to ordinary attack. Theoretically, the point of a sword could be slid up under a layer of scales to penetrate the flesh beneath, but that would lead to a shallow, slanting wound, only aggravating the monster. And what would the worm be doing while the swordsman was making his insertion? Sitting still? Not likely. All of this, Stile realized abruptly, was academic. He did not have a sword. He had forgotten to conjure one. He had only the platinum flute and his magic, which magic it was time to use. Stile's strategy had been to bring the monster out to the front, then cast his spell from the rear. Now a problem manifested. The worm had no rear. Its giant cylindrical torso extended back into the gloom. The shape of a worm, naturally, long. He should have known. Well, he should be able to enchant it anyway. Stile played the flute and the perfect notes poured out again, emerging like quicksilver to fill the tunnel with beauty. The magic gathered swiftly, unusually intense. Of course, they were down near the phasite lode, so the power was near at hand. The dragon reacted instantly. No senile mentality here. It had been about to lunge at the supposedly helpless damsel. Nasa was playing it uncomfortably close, but recognized the summoning of magic here. The tiny armored eyes oriented on Stile, and did not see him, since he was invisible. Nevertheless, the front orifice opened, its diameter cranking wider in several stages until it was a good yard across. From it, a blast of fog bellied out. In this instant, it occurred to Stile that the worm had not tried to use heat on Nasa. Maybe it preferred its meals raw. Time for self-defense. From head to feet, immune to heat, Stile sang. But as the fog struck him, Stile discovered it was a false alarm. The stuff was hot, but not burning. It was like being in a polluted sauna. The dragon heaved again. This time its breath was hotter and smelled worse. The creature was old. It took it time to get up full steam. The third blast was burning, and the fourth contained pure fire. From hairdryer to flamethrower in easy stages. Now for the attack. O mighty worm, complete thy term, Stile chanted, willing instant death on it. Then something strange happened. There was a coruscation in the air midway between them, as of a beam of light striking a refractive barrier. The worm did not die. Stile tried again. O worm of fire, weaken, expire. Again, that dissipation en route, and lack of effect. His spells were potent, but were not reaching the dragon. Now the creature's tiny eyes flashed. Stile had not realized that worms had eyes, but this one certainly did. He remembered the weapon he had been warned about. Light, blight, he cried, and the lightning fizzled out before reaching him. His backup spells were saving his hide. The worm paused, evidently taking stock. Stile did the same. His magic worked, but the worm was shielded against it. The worm had magic. That Stile could block. So the flute enabled Stile to perform his magic here, but not to use it directly against the enemy. Like two armored knights, they were so well protected against attack that neither could hurt the other magically. The elder elf had been right. So much for his rehearsed spells. This conflict was about to get physical, and the worm was a good deal more physical than Stile. Still, he would have to make a try. For one thing, he was now trapped inside the tunnel. The bulk of the worm was between him and the exit. In fact, the bulk of the worm surrounded him. The monster was slowly constricting, hemming him in. Nasa was on the far side of the dragon, unable to help. Stile had no weapon other than the flute. Now he knew that the flute, while effective, was not enough. Not against the magic worm. What he needed at that moment was a good sword. What was the spell he had prepared to summon such a weapon? The worm's tube mouth opened wider, and now a ring of teeth showed. 6-inch teeth, sure enough, pointing inward. No doubt useful for tunneling through rock, but surely adequate also to grind up one small man. Why couldn't he think of that spell? The head nudged closer. Stile held the flute before him in a futile gesture of defense, while he tried to cudgel his memory into yielding up the forgotten spell. Damn this failure under pressure. And discovered he held a sword. A shining platinum blade, long and sharp, two-edged, but light and balanced. Exactly the kind of sword he was well versed in. Well now, Stile exclaimed, confidence surging. The elves had not informed him of this aspect of the flute. It was a shape changer. Stile stepped briskly forward and stabbed at the worm's side. He expected the point to bounce off the tough scales, but it penetrated. Aha! The enchantment of the platinum sword was proof against the worm's resistance. Maybe it was a different kind of spell that, when buttressed by forceful physical action. The worm screamed like a siren and whipped its head about. Stile jerked the sword out and retreated. A geyser of dark red blood shot out of the hole, sailing in an arc through the air to splash on the stone several feet away. A rank charnel smell rose from the fluid. The dragon's nose nudged up to the wound. A slimy tongue slid out, intercepting the flow of blood. Did worms have tongues? This one did. Was it about to drink its own blood? A single slurp, and the flow abated. The nose drew away. The blood remained staunched. Maybe it was the saliva, some magical curative property. This monster could heal itself. The dragon's head was orienting on Stile again. This was one tough worm. It might not be able to see him, but it could hear him and smell him, and in the poor light that was just about as good. Stile had foolishly delayed when he should have been edging around to rejoin Nasa during the worm's distraction. Still, maybe he could. Stile strode for the worm's side. Immediately the snout snapped toward him. Stile dodged back and sprinted past the head to reach the mouth of the tunnel. Nasa was awaiting him in equine form. She too could place him readily by smell and sound. Next time he fought an animal, he would prepare smells of inaudibility and unsmellability. He leaped to mount her. At least we know it can be injured by this sword, he said. Maybe if we charge in, slash, and charge out before it reacts, then wound it in a second place and a third. He stopped. He no longer had a sword. He supported a long platinum lance. The magic flute had shown another facet. Stile braced the lance in his arms, and Nasa charged the worm as its head swung about. The point of the lance struck the neck just behind the head. Stile did not have his aim perfect yet. A lance was not the easiest thing to use. He really needed some sort of supportive harness. The shaft rammed in forcefully, and Stile was shoved off his mount. Of course, he realized as he picked himself up. The instrument was enchanted so that it could not be jarred out of his grasp, but the shock of impact had had its natural effect on his body. He should have anticipated that. The worm screamed again. That puncture hurt. As Stile hauled the lance out, a larger gout of blood spurted, but this time the worm could not get its mouth on the spot, because the wound was too close to the head. Stile perceived his avenue of victory. He lifted the lance, and it was what he needed, a hefty, double-bitted battle axe. As the worm's head twisted vainly to the side, trying to reach the wound, the neck was exposed on the other side to Stile's attack. He chopped down at that neck, 2 hands on his axe. This time he cut a deep gash. The head whipped back, catching Stile in a sideswipe and hurling him against the wall. He saw a flash of light as his head struck, then slid down the curve of the wall. His head was spinning. He retained the flute, but hardly had the wit to use it. He had not been knocked out, but had been badly shaken up by the blow. Now the head was orienting on him. The circular array of teeth widened to take him in, and the breath steamed up the vicinity so that Stile could hardly see. He scrambled away on hands and knees. He wasn't sure he could make it to his feet, or stay on them if he did. He had been in a boxing match once in the game and had been tagged by a solid blow so that his knees went rubbery. He felt similar now. Only there would be no time between rounds to recover. The snout followed him, then paused, grinding out a puff of smoke. Nasa had rammed her horn into the other side of the worm's neck, beside the first hole. She lacked the enchantment of the flute, but a unicorn's horn was itself magical, and a weapon no creature could ignore. The worm reacted automatically, turning on this annoyance. It was not terrifically smart. Stile scrambled to his feet. He swung the platinum machete ferociously. Machete? It had changed again, chopping with all his strength at the worm's body. More blood gouted out, spilling over Stile's 2 hands and splattering his front. He hated the burning, greasy feel of it, but kept hacking. The dragon whipped its head back, but Stile lashed at the snout with his cleaver, just missing an eye. The head recoiled, and Stile returned to work on the neck. This was like chopping through a tree, except that it became a good deal softer and messier as he got past the vertebrae and into the fatty tissues. Now blood was flooding out so voluminously that Stile was wading in it, and every lift of his implement splattered it further. Blood ran down the shaft as he elevated it, and along his arms to the shoulders. It sprayed across his face, but his grip remained firm, thanks to the flute's enchantment. As long as he willed his grip to be good, it was. He was wallowing in gore, but still the worm lived and thrashed, not yielding. Finally, the body was severed entirely. The neck and head fell on one side. The body writhed on the other. The job had been done. Stile had slain the dragon. His thought of victory was premature. Still, the thing didn't die. Instead, the cut ends frothed and solidified like sponge, and the bleeding abated. The head section crawled slowly by itself, while the body section cast about blindly, looking for its opponent. This was a worm. It was possible to cut a worm in half, and both halves would form new worms. Stile had not really accomplished anything yet. Well, yes, he had made some progress. The head no longer had the leverage to strike at him, and the body lacked sensory apparatus. In time, these situations would be remedied, but right now he had a definite advantage. He had to go ahead and destroy the entire worm right now, while he could. This was what Pyreforge had meant about the need for a good swordsman with staying power. What a job! Stile moved down the body, picking his spot, and resumed hacking with his machete axe. Again the blood gouted. Again the torso twisted in agony, trying futilely to fight or escape. The severed end came around, thinking it was a head. It smeared him with half-clotted blood, sickeningly, but could not bite him. Stile pressed on, feeling more like a butcher than a hero. In fantasy lore, the champion skewered the ferocious dragon one time and the beast collapsed cleanly. Here there was nothing neat or convenient or particularly noble about it. He was wallowing in foul-smelling gore, hacking apart a helpless mound of blubber. Hero? He wanted to vomit. By the time he completed the second cut, his arms were tiring. But still, each segment of the worm remained alive. If he quit here, they would become 3 new, smaller dragons. He had to abolish the entire mess somehow. Then he had a dull inspiration. The dragon had countered his magic with its own magic, but now it lacked organization. Maybe magic would finish it at this stage. It was certainly worth a try. He brought the flute to his mouth. It was festooned with gore. Stile's gorge rose, and he decided to try his spell without playing on the instrument. "O monster fair," he intoned with irony, "convert to air." The segment before him shivered, resisting. Whether this was because of residual anti-magic in the dragon, or because Stile had not summoned sufficient magic, he was not sure. Then it melted and evaporated into a truly noisome cloud. The spell was working. Stile devised spells to abolish the 2 remaining segments, then another to clean the gore from himself, Nasa, and the tunnel. He had done the job, and earned the right to borrow the flute. Yet he was not especially pleased with himself. Wasn't there some better way to settle differences than hacking apart ancient magical creatures? How would he feel if he were old, having some young, fresh midget chop him down to size? Yet, if he had not performed, the Lady Blue situation could have become quite difficult. And it would still become so if Stile did not locate and deal with the murder of the Blue Adept before that murderer caught up with Stile himself. Meanwhile, he wondered whether the lady was winning her chess game with Pyreforge. Dear God, that was a long chapter. 2.5 hours, just about. Over 2 hours at the very least. Dear Lord. What the heck? Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm definitely not getting to chapter 5 today. This was way longer than I was anticipating for this chapter. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. It's a good book. It's a very enjoyable story, if way longer than I had been expecting for this evening. Anyway, thank you all so much for having been here with me tonight. I will, of course, get this uploaded to YouTube this evening, so if you missed any of it, which, honestly, almost how could you not have at this point? It was very long. You can catch it at youtube.com/@SirArminius. Tomorrow night, we have our Pathfinder game, so I hope some of you guys will stop by and check that out. And then Thursday, I'll be back with Stompy Mech Night. Until then, thank you all so much for having been here with me. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you guys all again really soon. Good night, all.